All right, you guys ready to begin? All right, here we go. Good evening and welcome to our special meeting today, February 1st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Before we start, Ann, could you do the roll call for me, please?
Councilmember McQuaid?
Here.
Councilmember Nason?
Here.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Here.
Mayor Gary?
Here. Thank you, Ann. Today we're going to work on our work session. I'll go ahead and get a report from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a continuation from your January meeting with regard to the City Council Policies and Procedures document, formerly entitled, recently renamed to City Council Policy Manual. Seems a little bit easier nomenclature, but basically it includes a few things, 3 sets of policies really. One is the rules of procedure and order for all city council meetings, including the decorum of such meetings and the content of the agenda sections. Secondly, it includes your administrative policies, really outlining the conduct of the council and outlining expense reimbursement and whatnot under those administrative titles. And the third section is the governing policies, things that have been adopted recently by resolution that we are housing in one location for ease of reference. Attached to your staff report this evening, you will find a draft council meeting agenda template, which attempts to address some of the concerns we've heard more recently about the time consideration during your meetings to try and get the bigger items heard earlier in the agenda, including good of the city. This is simply a draft, completely changeable by the council as you see fit. And also a few of the other things that have come up recently or somewhat recently, either by members of the public or council members, include the question of how the city council reorganizes for the seat of mayor and vice mayor. Also the term of appointments to regional bodies by the city council, which the city council gave general consensus on as how you are appointed now to those regional bodies. Also the question of the Pledge of Allegiance on the city council agenda. And as noted a moment ago, the potential reordering of the agenda sections on the council agenda. So I will conclude my staff report with that, given that it really is the bulk of the agenda item to review the contents included in the attachments, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, do we have any questions for City Manager? Thank you, Nicole, for your report. All right, well, we'll go ahead and start going through the policies. I would like us to go through the first 10 pages. And if anyone would like to have any changes to the first 10, and then we'll just keep going until we get through all of them, if possible. Before we get through with that, I would like us to do, at some point, we'll do a hard stop, and so we can address the agenda as well before we start our regular council meeting, okay? Councilmember McQuaid, you had a question?
I didn't have a question. I thought you were ready to start on the first 10 pages.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. We'll start with Vice Mayor Jordan.
Actually was thinking it up topically rather than by page number. That's why I'm being a little slow here.
Right. So if you want to start with page number 1, I'm asking you, is there any changes that you would like to?
Yeah, no, I'm okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Tiedemann.
On page number 1, nothing to change.
Councilmember McQuaid.
As you refer to page number 1, are you really referring to page number 4? So we're actually in the meat of the document.
So we're in the meetings under A1 regular meetings.
Right.
And
That's
it's chamber capacity and alternative facilities for council meetings. So are there any changes on this page?
Yes.
Okay.
For A1, time and location, I think we should include electronic meetings. That's, not mentioned anywhere, but it's become the norm.
Anything else?
Not on that page.
Okay. Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, I agree that the electronic meeting certainly needs to be worked in somehow. The other thing is about the word retreat. In the new language, it says the mayor shall have the ability to reschedule a meeting for the purpose of holding an annual work session / retreat. And I understand the intent and agree with it. We absolutely should have those kinds of we should have lengthy work sessions, but the term retreat feels inappropriate to me in the context of a public meeting subject to the Brown Act. Part of in the private sector, when you do a retreat, you're trying to get away from everybody. You're trying to get just the decision makers who need to be included around the table. And so I'd prefer, I think that work session is without retreat is good enough, would be my proposal.
Okay. And then I would like to propose a change in our meetings to move either to 7 o'clock or 6:30. I think that also will help with the time restraints, the length of the program. I think that, the council meeting. It will also give the public the opportunity to, be a part. I think having them at 7:30, and I know we're going to address the agenda next, but I think if we move up to 7 or 6:30, I think that would be beneficial for the community. Councilmember McCoy?
Yeah, I have a little different thought on that. I can remember the days it started at 8, which was way too late. My concern is we often have closed sessions. So we often start at 6:30 or 6, even as we are doing tonight. If in normal times and you're working, it's difficult, I think, to get home, get your dinner, get your kids organized. I think that has the potential of putting a different burden on both people on the council and the public. And I think it also would make it difficult for staff who may need a little break if they get off work, say at, I'm not even sure, 5 o'clock. They too might like to get a little dinner, get their children organized. So I would like to keep it at 7:30 for those reasons.
Well, thank you for your comments. Anyone else on the council? Councilmember Nason and then Councilmember Tiedemann.
Yeah, how about 7 o'clock as a compromise? 6:30 does seem to me to be kind of getting into the dinner hour, but I think most of us can get dinner, and be done by 7 with more ease. And I do feel like the meetings go too late, so
Right.
that would be my preference.
And Councilmember Tiedemann?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Speaking as someone who has this semester class until 5, I want to be cognizant of anyone else who has those sorts of limitations and don't want to double schedule myself if we have any early meetings that start a little bit. So 7, I think, could work. 6:30 seems too early.
All right. Vice Mayor Jordan, any comments?
No, I'm happy with the pleasure of the council in terms of time. In
Okay.
terms of bringing in the electronic meeting process that we're currently following, I wonder if it would be better to wait until after 6 months or so, because I'm hearing from regional agencies a great interest in trying to get the legislature to adjust the Brown Act to allow for to facilitate virtual meeting attendance in the future. So I think we could spend, some work trying to put that into our procedures and policies now, only to have it be changed and we wouldn't want to comport with that future change. So while it would be nice to have it in here, I think we could save some work by putting that off down the line a bit.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. But I think also having it in here, it gives us an option, some flexibility for whatever reason. I mean, I don't see where there would be any harm in putting that in there, maybe and or somewhere, especially under the council chamber capacity or alternate facilities for council meetings. That just gives us the option to have that. But you know, whatever the council, go ahead, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Well, my understanding, and it may be wrong, is that we're only enabled to meet in this format due to an executive order.
Okay.
So when that executive order is rescinded, it won't matter what is in our policies and procedures. And if we embed the current process into our policies and procedures, it will be subordinate to state law. So that's why I'm suggesting there's really not that much utility in spending much time on it. Better to wait and see what happens with state law and hopefully a more permanent state situation.
All right, are we in agreement with that? All right, okay, sounds good. All right, flip over to A2, A3, and A4. I'll start with, anyone has any comments? Councilmember Nason, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, on the calling of special meetings, you know, we have adopted what seems to me a pretty strict interpretation of the Brown Act. I'm a little concerned that I think that a special meeting should be something that can be called by 2 members of the city council, because I'm not sure that you could talk to, using our interpretation of the Brown Act, I'm not sure you could call up 2 different council members and say, you know, we have this issue and I think we need to have a meeting and here's why it's important and here's why I'm doing this. You know, you're getting into, you can't really have that procedural discussion without having the substantive discussion. And if you're having the substantive discussion with 2 people on the council, you're getting into a Brown Act violation. So I would suggest that any 2 council members should be able to call a special meeting.
Okay. Councilmember McQuaid?
Yep, that makes sense to me. I wanted to speak to the next paragraph. Should I just go ahead?
Yes, but hold one sec. Where it says such notice must be delivered personally by mail, and should that be or email? Is that an option? Because again, we're still in quarantine for now.
It says email.
I don't know if that matters.
It
I
says
see
mail,
by mail.
email.
I don't see email on my document. It says such notice must be delivered personally by mail at least 24 hours before time of such meeting as specified in notice. Am I missing?
Yeah,
Is there
it's email in the previous sentence, but not in that sentence.
Exactly. So if we can put that in that sentence, that would be great. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember McQuaid, if you want to go to the next paragraph.
Okay, speaking about light fare, it says if closed session begins before 7:30, well, obviously we'd move that up to 7. I just question, although I've certainly enjoyed having dinner, if it's really necessary to provide food, and if it is, I thought it was before 6:45 was the cutoff. So if we're going to provide food, I think we need to figure out what the cutoff time should be. But I do wonder if it is necessary.
Anyone have any thoughts on that? No?
I'm agnostic.
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I think if it, you know, especially moving up a little earlier, we're going to have more meetings that go through the dinner hour. And if somebody, it's not a problem for an old retired lady like me, but if somebody needs to rush from getting off of work to getting to a city council closed session or something, I think it is nice to provide a meal. But, maybe we could, the next time it happens, maybe we could have a conversation about how best to do that. I think the bigger issue, I'm not concerned, these are very inexpensive meals. I'm not worried about that piece of it. I do worry about the burden on the staff of going out and getting food for us. That seems like something that maybe we could take turns doing or something. But I do think that some food should be available for people if they're going to work through the period when basically they normally eat dinner.
Okay. Any other comments? Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead. Oh, and Malal, see you.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, I was curious to get the city attorney's take on the 2 versus 3 for establishing a special meeting, and I think the Brown Act allows a quorum to talk about scheduling as long as they don't go into the issue.
No, you're absolutely correct. That was what I was trying to flip through my pages of the Brown Act to get to the exact language. And it does specify a special meeting may be called by the presiding officer or by a majority of the members of the legislative body. So my preference would be to keep the language as it is written to allow for the 3 and
for the 3 versus 2.
exactly.
Okay. All right.
So if we need to talk to the people, we can simply interpret the Brown Act a little more liberally, that we can discuss why we need to have a special meeting.
Yes, but I would minimize, it's enough to explain why we need to have the special meeting, but I would minimize the discussion to, so that you're not getting off topic and really discussing the merits of the content of the special meeting. Otherwise, it might just be easier to have the one individual go to the mayor to put it on the agenda and have a more detailed discussion. So then it would only be 2 having that discussion.
Yeah, I forgot about that actually you call 4 members of the council, because the only way you would invoke this is if the mayor says no. So then you've got to get 2 more people. So by the time you get to the meeting, 4 of the 5 have been involved in, or at least aware of what the substantive issues are. And there may be a 5th person who isn't. It troubles me a little. But if that's what people prefer, I'm okay with that. I'm just going to say, we just sort of assume that the Brown Act has to be interpreted much more liberally in these circumstances than as we normally interpret it.
No, and you're absolutely right, Councilmember Nason. There'll have to be some discussion of what the item is to put on the agenda. It's just how far you go into the merits of the discussion that would need to be scaled back.
Okay. All right, now we're down to A4, meeting to be public. Does anyone have any changes to that section A, B, C, or D? All right. Any changes to A5 in attendance?
Sorry, Mayor, can I get clarification on the light fair? There were a couple questions raised. One was whether it's continuing, and 2 was the timing.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Nason, what did you?
I think I was okay with it as it was. I think that Member McQuaid was interested in possibly offering a different language.
Councilmember McQuaid?
Yeah, I'm just reading what it says now. If and I'm thinking that we're changing the start time to 7, then the language would change to 7. I would say 6:15. Anything before 6:15. That's kind of following what I think we've done. If it was 7:30 and it was 6:45, I feel like a kindergartner thinking of a clock. I think that it correlates to 7 and 6:15.
Wait, what I'm looking at says light fare will be provided to council members in situations where special closed session meetings are held before the regular meeting time of 7:30 p.m. So I was thinking that would just be changed to 7 p.m.
Right,
because that's the regular meeting time now.
Okay.
correct.
I thought our practice actually was that we only had food if the meeting started before 6:45. So I was kind of going on that theory. But we could just change it to 7.
I would suggest we just change it to 7 and let's have a, I think that we can have some kind of discussion of how best to provide it and whether whether we can skip it for very short sessions or whatever. But for this document, I think that having it just be the meeting time makes sense.
Okay. So it'd be regular time of 7 p.m. All right, now, any other discussions for A4, meeting to be public? A5, attendance? A6, quorum? And A7? A8?
Some people have felt very strongly about not having a recess period in August. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't share that. I think it's fine, but it's been brought up in the past, just so people know.
Has there been any other options in the past, or has it been talked about, or that's just kind of been the norm?
I think that's been the norm.
Okay. Anyone have any changes today? Go ahead.
We can always, a special meeting can still, this would not be overridden, by the special meeting provision. If we needed a special meeting, we could have one during the recess.
Okay. All right, so B1 is basically our agenda. And so if you are in agreement, we can go ahead and discuss that. But I would like to open it up for any public comment. Let me just check and see. For just the items that we discussed, it doesn't appear to be any. Anne, am I correct? I'm sorry, there is one. If you want to go ahead and open it up for comment just for the items that we have covered thus far. That's A1 through A8, comment only, please.
Mayor, is it still 3 minutes?
Let's do 1 minute, please, just for sake of time.
Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Thank you. During A8, how long is the recess? I noticed it doesn't say 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I remember in school, I think we had a 5-minute break to get between classes, but I think our recess was 15 minutes. So I was just wondering the time, how long is the recess? Also regarding to A3, I think it's great you guys get food. I was just wondering, is the food organic? I mean, what fund does that money come from? The general fund? You're going to take it out of the sugar sweetened tax beverage fund, like everything else is dipping into that pot. Maybe an Albany restaurant can donate food because I understand, yeah, it is food. So there's 100 meetings? Well, no, not 100 meetings. There's about 20 meetings per year. So just wondering where the money's coming from.
Thank you, Jeremiah, for your comment. Next, please.
I have just a few comments on the retreat comment about not using the word retreat. I think the word retreat is misleading, so I think that would be a good idea. I agree with the 7 p.m. I think that city council members should bring their own food. And if they don't, then I think that advisory bodies should also get food. I don't think it should just be the council. And I don't agree with having the recess period in August, but if you do, I have a problem with the city manager should be granted discretion to act on matters related to city council during the course of said recess period. And I don't understand. It sounds like what you're saying is that the city manager suddenly becomes the city council and can make decisions. And I don't think that's a good idea. So I would I think why take a recess period at all? And if you are, I don't agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Julie. All right, I believe that's it, and I'll double check with you, but I don't see any more.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, all right, so I'll bring it back to the council. Did anyone want to address anything that was brought up? It's your option. All right, if not, we'll go ahead and go to the agenda.
Councilmember Tiedemann's raising his hand.
Councilmember Tiedemann, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to very briefly adjust the first question that was asked, the recess period is for the entire month of August. So it's not a recess during our meeting. It is the month that we do not have council meetings in.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead, please.
Yes, I think it would be useful to hear from the city manager the meaning or the intention of the language in the recess section.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, City Manager, please.
Nicole, you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, I didn't catch all of that.
No problem. The member of the community asked or suggested and wondered about the statement in the recess section that the city manager will essentially make decisions in the city council's stead during that period. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, if you've ever used that power, what that means. I mean, it's legally prescribed. So
Sure.
no matter what this says, there's only so much a city manager can do legally.
Absolutely. Yeah. In terms of procedure and overall operations of city government, any responsible city manager would request a special meeting if there is a matter of dire decision-making to the city council. This policy and procedures document has been carried forward through the city for years and years and years. So what you see before you is a refresh of that document. This language has been standing for that period of time. In my history with the city, I don't have an example of when this was used.
Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
So on that basis, I suggest striking that second paragraph of A8. And I think this is an area of authorities that is well defined in law in any case. So it doesn't add anything other than confusion, and thanks to the member of the public who brought it up.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. Any other comments before we move on to reorganizing the agenda?
Before we take that out, I'd be interested if the city attorney had any thoughts on it. Is it sort of a boilerplate that all cities follow? Or is there a specific reason we should or should not have it?
It does give the city manager some flexibility in terms of authority. So I think to address Nicole's point, if there's something that maybe didn't rise to the level of calling a special meeting, but maybe is beyond her current authority, this would be something we could point to. So it provides flexibility. It sounds like it hasn't had to be used for quite some time, at least in historic significance. So, you know, I defer to Nicole and the council if you'd like to remove it. It just seems like it gives some options.
Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead, please.
This may not immediately come to mind, but I'll put the question out there. If any examples could be provided of such an issue or situation. I mean, I don't know what more authority the city manager would have. Like spending limit is the spending limit. It's kind of hardwired.
All right, so are we in agreement to removing that sentence?
I just leave it in, but
We can remove it.
I'd rather leave it in, and my thinking is as follows. If I were in Nicole's shoes, if I'm the executive director, you know, whatever, the city manager, and I have to make a decision, and it's I'd rather have the language to point to in case anyone is going to say, well, you know, no, you ought not to have made that decision. I think that it's support for the city manager to say, yeah, we actually have that. And if we don't trust the city manager to make that kind of call, that's not, the right relationship with our city manager. So I would lean towards leaving it in, even if it's technically unnecessary.
I would too.
So I have a question. So if we decide, if that's an option to leave it in, are there certain things we want to like have something presented where the city manager cannot move without authority from the mayor, vice mayor, council member? I mean, will that kind of give us a compromise instead of, on these items, yes, on these items, you need to, I don't know, I'm trying to have some type of compromise.
I assume that's addressed to council member, to Vice
Mayor
Mayor
Jordan. Go ahead, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Well, since this regards the city manager, and obviously on policy, this wouldn't necessarily usually be the case, but since it involves the city manager directly, does the city manager have a preference in this regard?
Okay.
I honestly don't know that we could be comprehensive enough or explicit enough in a list of do's and don'ts. I think that I respect the trust bestowed in the position to make those decisions and be in communication with the city council.
Okay. So, I would be in agreement as well. We'll just leave it in there. I mean, it's a case by case. I'm sure if it's something outside of, the close authority, she knows how to contact us and we can make sure that we give her the answer she needs, or she can, make the decisions based on, operational needs. So, did anyone else want to say anything? Are we all in agreement on that? Just leaving it in? Vice Mayor Jordan? Okay. All right. So we're all in agreement with leaving that sentence in. Sounds good. Thank you so much, City Manager. We'll go ahead and move to the agenda for our next meeting starts. If anyone wants to start first? Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes. So in terms of the order of the agenda, I was interested in, if I can get to my notes, pardon me. So the order I was interested in was having a good of the city come, I have report on closed session come after roll call. So that it's up front, because if there's people who commented on the closed session and then, came back afterwards to hear the report, it seems like that would be the next thing that should occur. And it's usually all of 30 seconds. So it's quite fast. So I think that would be respectful. And then have good of the city after ceremonial, because again, that provides some greater certainty for people who have something that they want to bring to the city that's not on the agenda, because the consent calendar can run anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. And so requiring people who are trying to bring a new issue to the city to potentially be on standby for an hour seems not really of service to the people of the city. And then the final item I had was to have flexibility in whether unfinished business comes before new business or not. Sometimes the unfinished business can be reasonably projected to be the business that is going to be of most interest to the community, and by way of commenting or also just viewing. Sometimes it's new business, and I think it really can vary. So having some flexibility in the order there, so that we can better put up front what's of interest. Those were my suggestions on the agenda order.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, I wonder, would it make sense to adopt a possibility of creating a time certain for an item, when something is of particular interest, then people don't have to come and sit through lengthy consent item, unexpectedly long consent item matters, and people who need to plan their evening, to be home with the kids at bedtime or whatever, that have a reasonable time certain
Okay. Was that it? Councilmember Nason, I know you're looking.
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Councilmember Tiedemann and then Councilmember McQuaid.
I generally agree with Preston's reordering. I'd say we could go even farther, and if possible, we can move the consent calendar down after unfinished and new business. As you know, that's nominally supposed to be not very discussionful, so we could move it past all the stuff that's usually more interesting. I'm not sure if we can create a time certain, but if we can, that would be cool. You know, that would give a lot of people a lot easier way to comment on the things we do.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. I have a question for Councilmember Nason about time certain. I've seen like the school district as an example that gives specific times for each agenda item. And it's been my experience when they get to that time that the discussion is over, it's over, and they move on, sort of leaving people waiting to speak. Are you assuming that when we got to say it was time to do a new business item, that we would pause where we were and then come back to it? Is that what you're suggesting, or would it just be over?
Yes, that's what I and I'm thinking about it. The agency that I was most used to working with was one that was not subject to California administrative procedures. It was the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. But if there was an item that everyone knew was going to be a lot of people were going to show up and want to comment, it would be set for a time certain. And they would set the time for people to speak would be set just as it is in any other meeting. I'm not convinced it's consistent with public meeting requirements to cut off public comment. I'm not sure how, you know, that works, and I think it's undesirable in any case. But yeah, it would be a pause, or you know, finish something up very quickly or whatever it may be, but it would be a time that you definitely go as soon as you can after that time arrives to the matter that is of great public interest.
Thank you. You know, just sort of thinking about this, I would not like to see us push consent too far down. A lot of staff members come just for consent as they have an item on consent. And I think it's unfair to have them have to sit for a really long time through items that don't concern them. So I would like to keep consent where it is. That's all for right this second.
Okay. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead. And I'll chime in after you.
Yeah, my original inclination was to move consent down as well. I did ask staff or the city manager about that possibility, and she shared what Councilmember McQuaid just shared, which is a preference to keep it earlier because there's a lot of staff that need to be here in case there are questions and discussion, so that they might be able to leave. So in the order that I proposed, I was trying to balance minimizing city expense, staff time expense, and minimizing public waiting time expense. And it's not an easy titration. So I don't know if I hit the sweet spot. Those were sort of my organizing criteria for what I proposed.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
That'll make sense. Then we might want to keep consent higher. I just realized I forgot to mention earlier, because I almost missed it. I would also be in favor of removing the requirement to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
So are we on that?
Hold on. Let me jump in. I haven't said anything yet. Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. I'll see you, Mayor Councilmember Nason. Thank you. All right. So one thing that I would like to see change is that if there's items on the agenda that, like, if we don't have any ceremonial matters, I'm not sure why that's listed on there. I think we need to keep it real clean and concise and only put on the agenda that we're going to address at that time. It's just my suggestion. Public comments, I believe they should go up in order. Possibly, I know we said if there's closed session, but maybe after that, that makes sense. My concern is the presentations. You know, when we have someone from outside presenting, they tend to sit for a very long time before they provide their presentations. And now I don't think that they should have to sit through, you know, the consent calendar and things like that. So somehow we need to be able to adjust that to where, you know, again, they have families as well. Some of the matters that we're working on, we can move down so they're able to present and then go along with their families or their business. So those are just my suggestions. And then I'll go to Vice Mayor Jordan. I think he was next.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was going to second the suggestion not to include the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm personally quite confused as to how to rectify saying a pledge to the flag with my oath to the Constitution. They seem counterposing to me.
Okay. Councilmember Nason, I believe.
Yeah, you know, that saying the Pledge of Allegiance, I lean towards doing it, if only to, you know, put a stake in the ground that progressives are as entitled to patriotism as conservatives are, and I don't like people handing people a claim that, you know, you progressive cities are unpatriotic. So I lean towards keeping it, but without the under God, which I think has a very sinister history, very, very troubling and sinister. It was the under God words were added not to support people of faith, but specifically to express rejection of people who are not believers in God. So I lean towards keeping it as it is, but I don't feel passionately about it one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Nason. Councilmember McQuaid, go ahead.
Thank you. Just one thing before I forget, I think when we look at the agenda, we're looking at a template. So if there's no ceremonial matter, it doesn't really make any difference if the words are written on the agenda. There's just nothing there to do. So I wouldn't physically change the agenda for every meeting. And I may not be understanding what you meant, but that was sort of my interpretation. Regarding the pledge, I would agree with Councilmember Nason. I think it's important that we do it with the caveat, as we've done for the last several years, of removing the under God piece. To me, it's kind of a time that we stop and sort of think about what we're doing and connects us with the whole of government. And I do have that sort of same feeling that she did, that progressives can be patriotic, and it always feels to me like that's ripped away. And I also think it's an opportunity to think about, I know we've had comments that there is no liberty and justice for all, but I think we think about that. And then as we're deliberating other items on the agenda, how do we get to liberty and justice for all through what policies we're enacting? So I think it's a time to kind of think, reflect, and then get through our meeting. And you don't have to do it. You know, that's one of the nice things here, that if you don't choose to say the pledge, you don't have to.
Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. Councilmember Tiedemann, thank you.
So to add some more of why I think we could remove it, I definitely hear Councilmembers Nason, McQuaid on, you know, we don't want to be called a progressive city that hates America and give an easy point away like that. But I think if there's anything the past couple of years have proven, it's that a lot of people who don't really care about this country do a lot of performative patriotism. So we might not all be wearing American flag pins all the time. And even if we don't say the pledge, I think the best way for us to do the things that will make our country better and embody the high-minded ideals that the pledge and other founding documents call us to, is to do the work that we do here. And I think a better way to consider, the striving for liberty and justice for all is in actually the sections of our staff report that have the equity considerations, the environmental impact considerations that we should be considering in every action we take. So that's why I think we could do away and keep the substantive spirit that the pledge tries to address without the more performative element of it.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Vice Mayor Jordan, and then we're gonna kind of get everything structured so we can prepare for our next meeting. Go ahead.
Sure. And I would note there's 2 members of the community out there.
Right. I want to.
I mean, if I were to pledge, I would prefer to pledge allegiance to the Constitution and to the republic that it created. One nation with liberty and justice for all. I mean, it's the Constitution that matters. That's why we get to be here. And that's the oath that I swore in taking this office.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. So at this time, let's go ahead and get public comment. When we come back to discussion, we need to make sure we have an order of the agenda. And then do we need to, Mount City Attorney, do we need to vote on whether the Pledge of Allegiance should be on or off, or how do you propose we do that?
I think, if you want to take a straw poll, I presume at the end you'll have all the revisions incorporated. But as you've been going, it seems like you've been seeing where there's a majority for revisions. So it might be good to do that so we know how to make the revisions to the document.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. This is Corey Dostey. I would ask that the city manager report or an announcement section be considered to be moved earlier before the consent calendar, because that tends to be brief and it tends to alert people to what's going on in ways that are otherwise difficult to sort through, like the website, or sometimes even to sort through the e-news, and to get an awareness of opportunities like the Echo Housing presentation, those sorts of things. I also would express support for removing the Pledge of Allegiance as something of an intimidation factor that can make it hard for people to engage. I know myself personally, I find myself alienated by it because of what it has come to represent. So while I understand wanting to reclaim it, I think it is better to have something more neutral, perhaps a moment of silence, sharing an invocation, trading turns, who does that. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's how it's supposed to be done. That's how it's been done for many years since I was a kid. And, if I were to change one word, I would say, and to the democracy for which it stands. That's the only word I would change, because I like democracy. I'm not sure about the republic, but if I was going to change a word, I'd say democracy instead of republic. I don't know why we're trying to change it, but there's the United States Code, number 4, and that's how it's supposed to be done. So I don't know what's going on with this, that's all.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks. Hi. I have a couple of things. One is in terms of the order of the agenda. I can't remember whether we talked about council subcommittee reports being moved down farther in the agenda, but I'd like to see anything that their chances are people are not there to hear about. I think would be good. And I also thought maybe one possibility would be if there was a whole bunch of people that showed up at a meeting, either online or in person, to find out why they're there and maybe move that item up so they don't have to sit there for hours maybe just ask them, are you, which item? And then in terms of the Pledge of Allegiance, I find it embarrassing that you say the Pledge of Allegiance. I definitely think it should be removed. And I think Corey's idea of saying either having a moment of silence or finding something else that's thoughtful that you could all agree to say together. I think it's patriotic of us to think about removing the pledge. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And make sure there's no one else. I think that's it. Okay, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for discussion. Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Tiedemann.
I just want to discuss 2 points that were brought up in public comment.
Okay.
First of all, the idea of moving announcements up, that had been on my list, though I think by practice we have been doing those announcements essentially, just saying look at them in the agenda and using the agenda as the forum for those announcements. I don't know if that is a function of us doing them usually at 11:30 at night, and so wanting to be done, not wanting to go through them all. So if we are open to having that be a more substantive item and having it be possibly more succinct than it is, so, I think it would be beneficial to possibly move up so that those sorts of things are made clear at the start of a meeting when we possibly have the most people there. But that's a tricky one to balance, given that we want to make it more accessible for the big items that people are here for. So I don't want to move that up at the expense of time. And then just on the pledge, we had a couple of people mention that, and I just wanted to echo Councilmember Nason's point earlier, that the current version of the pledge as specified in the flag code was started in the 50s as an explicit rejection of communism and othering of other people. So I think it's important to recognize that history when we're talking about this sort of thing.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. Anyone else? Okay, so we're gonna bring it back. Let's go through the agenda and let's try to put things in place so we can move forward. And then if we can do a straw poll on the pledge before we start our next. We have 9 minutes to get this done, if possible. First, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's do a straw poll on that. And if you can do a roll call on that, and then we can take care of the rest.
We voting to keep or lose the pledge?
To remove, I think it's that what you brought. I think Vice Mayor Jordan brought that up, to remove it first. So let's do a roll to remove the Pledge of Allegiance.
Councilmember McQuay,
No.
Councilmember Nason,
No.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Mayor Gary.
Yes.
It is removed. Or it's going to be revised to be removed.
All right, so then we have roll call ceremonial matters. Are we in agreement to move the public comments up? Vice Mayor Jordan?
I can maybe speed this up by
Okay, go ahead.
the form of a motion. So what I've heard, and friendly amendments most welcome, roll call, report on closed session, announcements, city manager report, ceremonial, good of the city, consent, presentation, public hearing, unfinished new business, depending upon which is deemed to be likely of more interest, and then council reports at the end.
Any discussions? Any agreements? Councilmember McQuay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I need to see that. Can you either say it again so I can write it down?
I can share my screen.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me, there it is. Okay. In theory, it should be sharing. I got it right here. Is it large enough? I can blow it up.
Thank you.
Mayor, can you see our hands right now, or should we just jump
And
in?
I say you just have to jump in. I cannot see it. So
I figured. No worries.
Go ahead.
I'd say a friendly amendment. If we could, I would even move good of the city before ceremonial.
Good of the city. Okay.
I would, before you do that,
Sure.
I wouldn't do that. We invite people to come for ceremonial for one specific purpose that's sort of in and out. Good of the city's been known to go for an hour or more. I don't think that's a good change. I think ceremonial should be first. They come in and they can stay or leave as they see fit. It's kind of an honor to come in and do something. So I would leave that.
Very fair point.
Well, can we put ceremonial, let's just keep it either before or after report on closed session.
Okay.
So can we move that? It can go after roll call like it is, or I mean,
Yeah, that's a good
just
word.
put it there.
There. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm confused about announcements. They're basically the meetings that are coming up. They're just, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think about this. I don't think they even really need to be read. They're kind of a footer to the whole agenda. I don't see why we would move them up.
As they are now, I'd agree with that. This is what I was mentioning earlier as they are now, I think they're fine at the end. If we wanted to make them something more substantive than, or something that was actually read out, then they should be moved up. But, if it's just a list of public meetings, we can put them at the end.
And I think that's where the city manager's report is the substantive part.
So if we can move the announcements, please, Vice Mayor Jordan, put them at the end and then move city manager's report up. When I think good of the city should come thereafter, I would agree with that. Consent, presentation, public hearing. That looks good.
So city manager comes before the good of the city?
Correct. That's
Okay.
what
I just want to make sure that that's what you meant.
yes.
Yeah, I think the idea was that then people would actually hear it. Be assembled, and it's usually relatively contained. So I'm going to suggest again the report on closed session go before ceremonial, just because it is very short and it is about what has just happened prior. So as a matter of people who are paying attention to that topic, they don't have to sit through whatever ceremonies there are. Because again, the report on closed session is usually 30 seconds or a minute. I mean, it's incredibly short.
Yeah, I agree with that. And ceremonial can actually get pretty long sometimes.
Okay. All right. I think that's fine. That's good.
And then I would offer to the point of having a template. I agree. To me, as a member of the community, it was confusing to have a topic and then nothing underneath it. I didn't know what that meant. So if we are going to keep topics for which there's no agenda item or headings for which there's no agenda item, we might want to include on that agenda, no agenda items this meeting or something, some indicator that one is blank for that meeting.
Are you referring to what?
If you see ceremonial without anything there, you might think, well, there's going to be some ceremony. I don't know.
And so that was my whole point, is that if we're not, if we don't have a ceremonial, I mean, either, like you said, we can put something there, no ceremonial, or remove it, because again, it can be confusing because people are looking for, what is on the agenda. But if it's not there, that brings no room for confusion. It's basically we're going through what's listed on the agenda.
The only consideration I'd raise about that is after the meeting and, the minutes are adopted and everything, and you're going back looking for something, it can be helpful to know the number of the, you're looking like at the number 6 thing on the agenda that is always the number 6 thing. And you no longer have, if you start dropping items, you no longer have that consistency from minutes to minute. So I would lean towards the idea of leaving it on like okay, ceremonial, you have ceremonial on agenda, but you are not having any ceremonial matters, you could put on the agenda, number whatever, ceremonial, no action. Or,
Yeah.
or none.
Either way, I just, like I said, I think it just needs to be specified. Either we're going to take it off or at least let the public know that, no action or no ceremonial, however we want to address it. It just needs to be, clean. So it's an easy read.
Yeah, and I support keeping it on because I think that will also make life simpler for staff rather than having to change the numbering back and forth all the time.
Okay. All right. So it's 7:30. I'm going to go ahead. I
okay.
can't see who needs to talk.
Are we done with this?
Well, should I move? Can I move this?
Yeah, and so that's what I was
Oh,
getting
okay,
at.
sorry. Thanks.
7:30. If we want to wrap this up so we can go ahead and start our regular meeting. Councilmember McQuaid?
Yeah, I'm not ready to agree on this. So I would, if we have to stop now, and I think we do, I would suggest we stop to my favorite phrase, to a date certain, to continue this discussion.
And this is for the agenda. You're not ready to agree with the agenda. Is that correct?
That is correct. But I
Okay.
suggest we wait till the next, is it February 16th meeting?
Do we all agree? Can't see if you do. Vice Mayor Jordan, can you? Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and table this to the next meeting just for the agenda. And then we'll come back into making the changes. So we've already made one change to the agenda. We can start in our regular meeting. Is that okay?
No, the agenda's been published.
Okay.
You can't change it now.
We'll have to come back to formalize any changes directed. So
Okay.
if there's
Sounds good.
And
All right.
I'm sorry, but we're not done with the policies and procedures either, right? We're going to continue those later.
That is correct. So we're taking them section by section. So we're going to wrap up the agenda February 16th if we can, and then we can do a brief study session again to continue to work through the policies until we get through them. Does that sound good to everyone? All right, our study session is adjourned, and now we are moving into our regular meeting. All right, good evening. I want to call you all to our regular meeting. Today is February 1st, 7:32 p.m. We're going to go ahead and call to order. Councilmember Nason, will you go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Nason. We'll go ahead and do the roll call with the city clerk.
Councilmember McQuaid,
Here.
Councilmember Nason,
Here.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Here.
Mayor Gary.
Here. Thank you, Anne. So now we're going to item number 3, which is ceremonial matters, and it's the proclamation for our Black History Month, February 2021. I'll go ahead and read that. It's a proclamation of Black History Month, February 2021 proclamation. It is vital we recognize and celebrate the different races, nationalities, and backgrounds that have shaped our city. Like all cities in the state and nation, African Americans are endowed with a unique strength and resilience rooted in their struggles against slavery, many forms of oppression, deep-rooted adversity, and violent opposition to their demands for equality and change. And their contributions and achievements are respected and greatly valued in the city of Albany. Whereas the month of February is designated Black History Month to remember and reflect on the tribulations faced by the African American community and to learn their vibrant culture and history and to celebrate their many invaluable contributions. And whereas Black History Month grew out of the establishment in 1926 of Negro History Week by Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our attention to continued need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideas. And whereas the history and contributions of African American citizens were consistently overlooked, misinterpreted, and undervalued in the curriculum of public education institutions prior to the Civil Rights Acts of 1964. And whereas restrictive deeds and discriminatory lending and real estate practices prevented Black families from moving into many areas, and economic inequalities continue to make it difficult for many African American families to afford to live in neighborhoods and highly successful schools. And whereas Black History Month reminds us that African Americans struggle for equal opportunity and against discrimination began hundreds of years ago and have not yet ended. And whereas the Black History Month 2021 theme, the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity, explores the African diaspora and spread for Black families across the United States. And whereas the celebration also acknowledged the important, though often untold roles and achievement of African Americans have played in our history, identity, culture, economy, literature, inventions, sports, science, medicine, and politics. And whereas we recognize our Black elected officials in the city that begin with Joyce Jackson, first Black mayor, Janelle Gary, second Black mayor, Member Brian Doss, first Black male AUSD board member, Melissa Boyd, first Black female AUSD board member, Dr. Frank Wells, first Black superintendent. And whereas we also lift up Black-owned businesses, including but not limited to Beacon Home Care, Freeman Insurance Services, Mr. C's, Lizzie Cajun Cuisine, Heal Pilates, and GF Brown Insurance Services contribute greatly to the city's economic development and diversity. Now, therefore, the City of Albany does hereby proclaim February 2021 as Black History Month in the City of Albany. We acknowledge the contributions of African Americans in our community and recognize our journey to a fully inclusive society is not yet over. And with that said, I will go ahead and present this proclamation to the president of the Black Parent Advisory Group, Linda Williams. And are you able to have her accept? Thank you. Go ahead, Linda.
Good evening, everyone. Hello. Oh, I'm muted. Oh, no, I'm not. That's
No, go ahead.
not me. I thought that, I'm like, that's not me in that square. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for this recognition of Black History Month. It means so much to families in Albany, as well as our students in Albany Unified, to know that our history, our contribution to the city of Albany, to the Bay Area, to the state of California, to this country, is being recognized and being honored. That our history does not begin with slavery. It begins far before that, and our contributions to society globally throughout the diaspora should be recognized and taught in our schools. So I appreciate the resolution and your recognition of Black History Month.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you. Councilmember McQuaid, you had a question?
No, I have a comment.
Okay, a comment, go ahead.
Thank you. I would also like to recognize Gail Tapscott, an African-American woman who was elected to the Board of Education in 1986, and she served for 1 term. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we can make that correction. Is that okay, City Manager, if we make that before I sign? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid, for bringing that to our attention. All right, let me make sure there's any public comment. Nope. All right, we will go to our consent calendar. I'll start with the council members first. Is there anything you would like to pull on the consent calendar? Councilmember McQuaid, I'm sorry, go ahead. And then Vice Mayor Jordan, sorry, go ahead.
5-5.
Okay.
And
Vice Mayor. Okay.
Mayor, if I may, item 5.5 is also being pulled by staff. We'd like to return it to your meeting on February 16th to make some necessary changes.
Okay, Councilmember McQuaid, Vice Mayor Jordan.
I'm sorry, I pulled 5-5. Nicole, what one is being pulled by staff?
5.5.
5-5.
I'm sorry.
We'll bring it back at February 16th after we make some necessary edits.
Perfect.
So is that okay, or do you still want to, Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
well, I just want to confirm as one of those edits, the first item that was brought up by Mr. Larson in his comment about public hearing still being referred to as a part of the administrative decision process in a section other than the sections that were presented for adjustment. It's a question for our city manager, actually.
Yes,
Okay.
it will include that change.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
So my question, do you guys still have anything? No? Okay. Anyone else want to pull anything off the consent calendar? All right, we'll go ahead and at the public. Go ahead, please.
Alan, go ahead.
He's on mute. Go ahead, Alan, please.
Oh, are you referring to me, Alan?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just testing my Zoom. I
Okay.
did want to comment that I didn't hear Joyce Jackson's name mentioned when you mentioned African-American civil servants. Was her name mentioned?
Yes, sir, it was. She was
Okay.
the first.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you. All right, next person.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. Can I comment on section 5.5? Item 5.5?
So if you want to pull it, I'll have you pull it. And go ahead. If you have just one comment, go ahead, please.
Yes, because I was worried that you were just going to table it completely. But I'd like to comment on it so that when it comes back to you, maybe what I have to say might be taken into account.
Okay, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to talk about the requirement for public notices at the site of proposed construction, which you are eliminating. So I'm reading from section 2212.090, required public notice. Subsection C says, a notice of public hearing shall be posted on the site and in at least 3 public meeting locations in the immediate neighborhood 14 days before the public hearing date. The posted notice shall have lettering sufficiently large to be seen clearly and read easily by a passerby, and the posted notice shall contain information as specified in subsection A. In subsection D, I'll just read a phrase here. It says all costs of giving notice shall be borne by the permit applicant. But what I've read to you is from the Berkeley Municipal Code. As I understand it, you were elected by the citizens of Albany to act in our best interest. You, the city council, provide direction to staff through the city manager, not the other way around. So I am disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips, for your comment. Jeremiah, go ahead, please.
Hi, thanks. I second the last gentleman that spoke. I think he's right, for sure. And also, I'd like to pull 5, 6.
Okay, will you go ahead and do your comment for 5, 6?
Oh yeah, it says resolution is the second link. It says, whereas all cities in California must plan to meet the housing needs of everyone. That means homeless or unsheltered or transients in their community by updating housing element portion. I just want to make sure that you're committing to meeting the housing needs of everyone in their community. And by everyone, I mean homeless people and unsheltered. And this COVID crisis is getting worse. There seems to be more mutations, and there seems to be more homeless on the streets. I see more and more unsheltered on Solano Avenue every day. And I just hope that we meet the housing needs of everyone. And I think it's really important. People sleeping in their cars, it's not really humane. Maybe by this time next year, there's going to be double the amount of homelessness within our city. And it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. I mean, there's the eviction thing right now, the memorandum on people not being evicted, which is great. But imagine if we didn't have it. There'd be so many evictions, and there'd be so many families and people that have never been homeless before, never experienced homelessness or couch surfing or living in a car. And what about those people? There's homeless that have been on the streets for 5, 10 years, and they may choose that as a lifestyle. But what about first timers? What about single mothers with 3-year-olds? You know, what are we going to be doing about new homelessness? So I think we got to step up our game and plan to meet the housing needs of every single person in our community. There may be children that are homeless. They may be abandoned by their parents, and there's kids under 18 that are homeless. So what are we going to do as a city to meet those needs of everyone?
Thank you, Jeremiah, for your comment. And it looks like we have one more. Please go ahead. A couple more. So before we let them in, just a reminder, we're still on the consent calendar. So if there's anything you would like to pull on the consent calendar, we have not moved to public comment as of yet. Okay, go ahead, Ann.
Linnea or Lynn?
Hi, my name is Linnea Doshi, and I'm here to speak up on behalf of Stare Down, a horse who has recently passed away at Golden Gate Fields on Thursday, January 28th.
So excuse me, hold on one sec. So we're just doing the consent calendar. Public comment is next. So if you want to hold until we get to the next item, which is number 6, we'll go from there, okay? Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring it back to City Council. Seems that there's no additional items that we need to address on the consent calendar. Is there any comments? Go ahead, Vice Mayor Jordan, and then Councilmember McQuaid. Go ahead.
Actually, sorry, I was behind in my notes. I did find an adjustment to the minutes.
Okay.
It says that the president of the Board of Education will be making appointments. Actually, it's the Board of Education.
Okay.
I don't understand why it got phrased that way, but I think you just strike president and just leave Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Councilmember McQuaid?
I'll move consent.
but we were
second.
still, oh, hold on. We haven't, let's back up. Is there anyone else who has any comments about the consent calendar before we propose a motion? Is everyone good? All right. Now, Councilmember McQuaid,
I'll move consent.
Vice Mayor Jordan.
I will second. Thank you.
All right. Let's go ahead with a roll call, please.
Councilmember McQuaid,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes, with thanks to the mayor for keeping us organized.
Mayor Gary.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ann. And now we're moving to item number 6. And this is good of the city for public comment. Let's see how many we have. I would ask if you're interested in making a comment, please raise your hand. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to knock our public comment time to 2 minutes. It looks like we have a few hands, so I'm just trying to make sure we have everyone their hand up. Oh, it looks like.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't expect to be the next person so fast. I was like, thought I was going to be after Jeremiah. I've never been before Jeremiah. How did that happen? I wanted to comment on about the terms of city council members. I think that the city council members' term should be 4 years, and that's it. You can't run again, and you can never be on city council again. We should be done. 4 years, we're done. That's my suggestion. I'm finding it just great to have these new council members, and 8 years of council members is too long. And as Vice Mayor Jordan has pointed out, many times when somebody, once they get on the council, an incumbent is very hard to beat. So it's hard to break in. So I think 4 years is plenty for our small city. We need people with new ideas, new voices, and then people should move on to something else. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Julia. Next, please. Go ahead, Brian, please.
Hi, it took me a second to find the mouse. Thank you. This is Brian Beal. I wanted to revisit the election that we had recently, now that we actually had an inauguration, and just talk about it in perspective. As previously people have talked about, Albany is just coming out of a 6-year 6 years, the same city council. We've got some big changes here. There's also big changes in Washington. And I just, wanted to take a moment to say, hey, look at all that Albany did in the last 6 years. Starting with the Trump administration, we had this great sanctuary city policy to deal with some of the things that happened. But leading up to that, some of the progressive things that we've done as a city, the soda tax and the sidewalk tax, I think people in the Biden administration maybe need to know about some of this stuff. And also that there's an opportunity here for the city to congratulate Mr. Biden and Mrs. Harris after having been actually inaugurated. And so I think this would be a good opportunity to draw attention to things like our sidewalk tax and so forth that could potentially be solutions that I think, as Mr. Biden figures out what's going on, he's going to see infrastructure as a big challenge, and that maybe some of the things we've done here would be good. So that's what I had to say on that. And I want to remind everyone that Valentine's Day is coming up in just 2 weeks. So be sure not to be shy. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian, for your comment. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Linnea, and I'm here to speak up on behalf of a racehorse named Staredown, who recently passed away at the Golden Gate Fields on Thursday, January the 28th, and on behalf of the countless other horses at the mercy of the horse racing industry. I encourage the City Council to take measures to ban horse racing for the following reasons. A racehorse's career, it's only 3 to 4 years on average, but these horses can live to be up to 25 to 30 years on average. This industry is creating many unwanted horses who then get shipped across the border to slaughter, and an estimated 10,000 racehorses are sent to slaughter every year. A University of California at Davis, they had a study of 306 racehorses destined for slaughter and found that 60 of them sustained injuries during transport. And last year, 27 horses died on the track at Golden Gate Fields. Our relationship with these animals have been corrupted by this industry, which values profit over the well-being of the individual. And I would urge the City Council to use your power to end horse racing in Albany. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi there, my name is Samantha. Thank you for allowing us to have public comment today and everything that you do for the City of Albany. I would also like to speak on behalf of Stare Down, the racehorse that was killed on the track on the 28th. One thing that people may not know is that the Environmental Protection Agency classifies large CAFO, that's concentrated animal feeding operation, as any facility that confines 500 or more horses at a time. So the stall amount at Golden Gate Fields is 1,400 horses. So during the highest season of horse racing, when the entire facility is full, Berkeley, the track stables lie in Berkeley and then the track itself lies in Albany. Berkeley City literally has a CAFO that's almost 3 times the EPA recognized amount for being a quote unquote large CAFO. So I would really like the Albany City Council, and I strongly urge you to work amongst yourselves and also work with your fellow legislators in the state to end horse racing in California, and specifically to close and reevaluate the land needs for Golden Gate Fields. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Yeah, the people speaking about Golden Gate Fields, if you're still listening, I suggest you attend tomorrow night's Social and Economic Justice Commission and make a public comment there too. So Social and Economic Justice could work on that. Also, I don't know what's going on with the city of Albany, but I think that a lot of businesses on Solano Avenue are already struggling enough, and the city just keeps wanting to charge full price for the business licenses. $900 for a business license for a hair salon that's only been open for 3 months. I don't think that's very fair. So city manager, if you're listening, anybody can do something about maybe a business license forgiveness program to show that the Albany city actually cares about keeping businesses open on Solano. They're already hurting enough. I posted the city council meeting many places, so there could be some public comments tonight. Gordo's all along Solano. And also, Brian, just want to make sure everybody knows that it's Chinese New Year, February 14th also. So there's nothing in here for the Chinese New Year. I'm just curious, we're in a pandemic with COVID-19, and there's not one thing on this agenda about COVID-19, about, reopening. There's no COVID-19 update. And I was just wondering if every single city council meeting, we can at least have a COVID-19 update on what's happening. I think that'd be a good idea. And also, I'm just waiting for the Albany Pool to reopen the shower program. That would be a really good thing. So keep up the good work, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi, yes, thank you. I would just like to also thank Sam, who previously spoke, and I want to echo a lot of what she said about Golden Gate Fields Racetrack. My name is Dr. Crystal Heath, and I'm a veterinarian and a lifelong horse person. I've galloped on the racetrack at Alameda and retrained ex-race horses for new careers. But in veterinary school, I treated racehorses and learned firsthand how decisions about their care were based on profit instead of what was in their best interest. And on the 28th, Stare Down became the first horse of the year to die at Golden Gate Fields Racetrack. And last year, 27 horses died at the track. But the real horror is the 10,000 ex-race horses that are sent across our borders to slaughter every year. This industry is creating a glut of unwanted horses, and many horses are also needlessly injured on the track. While at the track, they live in small box stalls where they're unable to exhibit their natural behaviors. The horses deserve better from us. We are a progressive city, and this industry needs to go the same way as so many other cruel industries. So please, let's shut down this track and protect these horses. And Albany can be a bold leader in our future to protect all of those who need our support and defense. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Go ahead, Heather.
Yes, hi. Oh, well, hold on.
You may have to turn off your other device.
Okay, hold on. There, okay. I'm so sorry. I'm leaving this meeting.
Okay, sorry about that, Heather. Go ahead, please. Next.
Hi, my name is Julie, and I'm also speaking about the horse racing, and I want to thank the person who encouraged us to speak tomorrow night as well. Horses are the victims of the horse racing industry, which is really nothing more than a purely capitalist, exploitative, profit-driven industry, where horses are treated as nothing more than either money-making or money-costing machines. These intelligent, sentient beings are so often given drugs to mask minor injuries and forced to run as fast as possible, resulting in broken legs or other injuries, and are usually killed on the spot, even when injuries are treatable so that their owners can get insurance money. Often they're later sent, when they're no longer money-making machines, they're sent to be slaughtered in a cruel and terrifying way. The land at Golden Gate Fields could be used for so many other things, like a community garden. It could be low-cost housing for the houseless. Horse racing has ties to gambling, and I think in historical terms, it had ties to the mob. It's just not a progressive way to treat sentient beings. And I think it's time that Berkeley and Albany progress past this and get rid of this outdated, archaic, abusive, and cruel industry. So I encourage you to do whatever you can to please help us ban horse racing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi there, my name's Almira. I'm actually calling in from Berkeley, and I'm also speaking about horse racing. I moved to Berkeley about 4 or 5 years ago, and honestly was blown away that there was actually a horse racing track in the city. It was something I would have never imagined would have been in a place like Berkeley, and then finding out that, you know, it's straddling these two cities. And I think hearing from all the people speaking at this meeting, I've emailed a couple of you, got some responses back that I really appreciate. It sounds like the will of the people is to not see this industry continue. But because it's partly in Albany, partly in Berkeley, you know, doesn't seem like there's a ton of leadership happening to shut this place down and transition it to a place that could be so much better for so many people. And so I'm calling on all of you to do the thing that I think a lot of people would like to see happen, which is take the initiative and work to end horse racing, first at Golden Gate Fields, and then hopefully across the state of California. Really appreciate it. And I know that there are people in Berkeley on the city council as well who would support this initiative. And I think together, you two teams could work and make it happen. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for your comment. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Chris Rowe. I'm also speaking to condemn the cruelty is happening at Golden Gate Fields, and I hope you'll take all these thoughtful comments to mind and close this cruel place down. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next comment, please.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you, Heather.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I was having trouble with my computer. So I just want to remind all of you, and first of all, thank you for having this meeting and for letting me back on the call. My name is Heather Wilson. I'm calling you from Los Angeles, and I am a nurse anesthetist, and I follow horse racing very closely. The Stronarks are a Canadian family, and they're the owners of this racetrack. And we have to think of what is in the best interest of your city, what is in the best interest of Albany and Berkeley. And the people that own this track are from Canada. They are racing these horses to death and lining their pockets. And the horses are doing all the work. And you have to really think about, just follow that money trail. If you look at the last 12 fiscal years, and these are all public data that are kept on record by the CHRB, and I can send you all this information. They run on a fiscal year from July through June. Golden Gate Fields averages 45 dead horses every year. 27 is a good year. So if you're upset about 27 horses, you have to consider a lot of racing was shut down due to COVID and perhaps inclement weather. But this track averages 45 every single year. There's also a long list of missing horses that I call. They're pulled up in distress. They take a bad step, as they say. They're bleeding. It's very common for racehorses to bleed from their lungs as a consequence of exertion. That is not normal and that is not natural. Horses should, and no animals should be forced to run, and they should not be forced to run until their lungs bleed. And this is common. This happens all the time. So I have a list of missing horses from Golden Gate that the CHRB refuses to answer. And there's so much more I could tell you about this, but I've only got 2 minutes. But I want to thank you again for taking our comments, and please consider actively phasing out this blood sport. Its time is over. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And the last hand, please.
Hi, my name is Rasa Petroskaite, and I'm a volunteer actually at the Berkeley Animal Rights Center. And as I understand that there's a possibility that the city of Albany cannot ban horse racing, unfortunately. And I'm not sure about the law, or maybe it is possible, but my understanding is there might be a California law that preempts it. So again, I don't really know the legal rules, but in any case, I urge you to take whatever action you can to please try to ban horse racing, just because, as others have said, it's archaic. And in the past, as you know, obviously women couldn't vote. So some laws just need to be changed, like gay marriage wasn't legal. And later, California even banned the sale of fur just because it's completely unnecessary to torture and kill animals for some things. And gambling is one of those things. I mean, there's no reason to gamble on horses, and so many horses have died, especially in the past year. So we just, as a society, need to take action and protect especially such intelligent animals such as horses, and they're friends to so many people. So I urge you, please take whatever action you can, such as working on the state level with your colleagues. So please be proactive and please be the voice of people who really care about animals. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. And I believe that was the last one. Yes? All right. Thank you all for your comment. We appreciate you taking the time to join our meeting and voice your concerns. Now I'll bring it back to City Council. Looks like Vice Mayor Jordan has a comment or a response.
Yes, to the comment about it's not charging a business license tax this year. I know that city staff has looked at that, so I thought it would be useful if the city manager was willing to convey to the community member in this forum the situation there.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. Go ahead,
Thank you,
City Manager.
Mayor. Yes, we did look at that. We've looked at basically everything we can do to support a community at this time. Unfortunately, the business license tax was approved by the voters, and the language is very clear that there is no authority to waive or withhold those payments for any period of time. We are looking at it as a priority to update that language as we actually review the entire business license tax system, which will be forthcoming to the council as soon as we can.
Thank you, City Manager. All right, with that said, we'll go ahead and move to item number 7. So item number 7 will address the City Council subcommittees, which is 7.1, 7.2. We have the council member report from Councilmember McQuaid, all the bodies, and any council meetings and events the council members attended during this time. So we'll go ahead, and I think Councilmember Nason, we'll start with you.
All right, no report from either the Albany Waterfront Park or San Pablo Avenue Corridor Project subcommittees at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember McQuaid?
Thank you. I don't have any reports. I did attend several meetings, so do you want to hear that now?
Yes, please, all in one.
Councilmember Nason and I did attend the Alta Bates Regional Task Force. Nothing of substance to report, I would say. I attended several East Bay League of California Cities Division events. I sat in on the ECHO webinar, and we had an Everyone Home leadership team board meeting. Thank you.
All right, hold on, Councilmember Tiedemann. Councilmember Nason, go ahead. Did you have a question?
I did attend an Alameda County Transportation Commission meeting, and I'll report that in writing in the next agenda.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilmember Tiedemann?
I attended the first meeting since I was appointed to the board of the EBCE, the East Bay Community Energy Corporation. It was a very interesting meeting, a very interesting collection from all across the East Bay, where we discussed their reserve policy. So I'll hopefully have more substantive updates on their policy soon.
Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. And Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes, I attended a meeting, my first meeting of the board of the Waste Management Authority / Energy Council. There are actually two bodies that are typically referred to as stop waste, and learned of a state law that was passed, I'm not sure how many years ago, but it's in theory going into force January 1st of 2022. And it requires cities to purchase a certain amount of products made from organic waste that is diverted from landfills each year. This law is SB 1383, and it was news to me. It might not be news to staff. I'd be surprised if it was news to staff or some of the council members who've been on the council longer. But the upshot is that its cost exposure could be somewhere between $84,000 and $240,000 a year, and it is an unfunded mandate from the state. I don't know how or why. I haven't researched how the state can impose this unfunded mandate, since I believe there's a state law that requires the state to pay for its mandates. Something maybe the city attorney can weigh in if she's familiar with this law, but I don't mean to put her on the spot.
I'm not familiar with it, but I'm happy to come back with a brief update at some point in the future.
Okay. Anything else, Vice Mayor Jordan? Thank you so much for your report. Okay, and then myself. So I did attend the Police and Fire Pension Fund Board. This was our first meeting. Basically, we just had a recap of the pensions. I was selected to be vice chair. And so as we move forward, we'll, for myself, I learn more about the police and fire pensions available. Also, myself, Vice Mayor Jordan, Councilmember Tiedemann, we did attend the 2021 New Mayors and Council Members Academy. This was brought with the League of California Cities. It was January 21st, 22nd, and then January 28th and 29th. It started off with a mock city council trial, kind of like the do's and don'ts. We had some different council members, attorneys, all played a role in teaching us what not to do as members of this body and what to do. So it was very humorous, light comedy. With that said, we also learned a lot about, policy roles, communications, and civic engagement, financial responsibility. I felt that this meeting was very informative, and it did help to prepare us for our roles. So I appreciate that the league does have these services for us as members and as a whole. And I hope as we continue this role over the next 4 years, we'll be able to engage much more and to learn more. All right, I'm sorry, Councilmember Tiedemann, go ahead.
Just a very minor correction due to scheduling. I was not able to attend with y'all.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But I'm looking forward to watching the videos, which I'm told were recorded.
Okay, my apologies, but there you have it. All right, with that said, let me just make sure. It looks like we have one public comment. We'll do 1 minute briefly. We need to get through the agenda. Thank you.
Hi, regarding the Alta Bates subcommittee hospital task force, that's a hospital, right? I was just wondering, is that hospital having COVID tests? Is Alta Bates offering any sort of COVID vaccines in the future? I'm not sure if you met with them or not, or if you guys had talked about COVID-19, but it would be nice if there was some sort of COVID-19 report from Alta Bates Hospital. I think that'd be a good idea. And the AC transportation, if next time you meet with the Alameda County Transportation, can you talk to them about the Alameda County Transit buses flying, speeding up and down Solano Avenue? I mean, it's our business district. We have kids crossing the street, and yet AC Transit buses are driving 30 miles an hour. It just doesn't make sense.
Thank you so much for your public comment. All right, we'll go ahead and move to item number 8. But before, I'm sorry, I want to thank all the council members for reporting their meetings and attending these committee meetings. I think once we get moving, we'll be able to report things that will mostly be more beneficial to the city and that we can utilize in some instance. That said, we'll go to number 8, the city manager's report. City manager, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to remind the public and the council of this important webpage as the lead agency for navigating the pandemic locally. Alameda County Public Health is the place to go for the hub of information, the most current factual information to find. As you know, the shelter-in-place order has been lifted effective January 25th, and we are continuing to work through how to help our businesses overcome these trying months. Some programs will be forthcoming as soon as we have a little bit more ability to identify the pressing priorities of our diverse business community. Also, with regard to vaccines, we're certainly watching the news and anxiously awaiting a better rollout in Alameda County. And my understanding is that is immediately on its way in February, and I look forward to seeing the improvements there, including locally. So please stay tuned for additional information on enhanced vaccine accessibility. Also, let's see, in terms of local city news. Thank you, Anne, for sharing your screen. Pardon me while I joggle screens here. a reminder that I hear it raining right now. So a reminder that we have free supplies for sandbags available through the city. Again, you can pick up the bags at our fire department, and the sand is down at 900 Buchanan Street at Ocean View parking lot, Ocean View Park parking lot. If you need help filling up sandbags, we're also here to do that as well. You can call 510-524-9122, and we can assist with pre-filled sandbags. An upcoming virtual workshop, the Albany Paratransit virtual workshop, will be held on Thursday, February 18th at 10 a.m. This will be a live Zoom workshop to provide information and insight into various services offered by the city and county paratransit programs. You can register for this workshop by calling 510-524-9122. Notice that's the same number I noted above. This is our neighborhood services program, who provides a lot of services to the community. Let's see, it's also linked on our calendar online. We are continuing to provide meals, groceries, essential items, and other services to those experiencing need in our senior community and others seeking assistance. We are up to over 14,000 meals delivered, and amazing numbers with regard to all services under this umbrella. For Public Works, we've planted 500 native plants on Albany Hill along the ridge adjacent to the fire road on the former trail between Taft and Jackson at the Madison entrance. These native plants are good for wildlife pollinators, and we look forward to continuing our work on the hill. Recently, we had some really intense storms, and we are thrilled to report that there was no significant property damage from fallen trees. We only had actually 4 trees that fell, and 2 were in open space areas. A reminder to those wishing to seek pruning for street trees that it is required to have a certified arborist do that work. You can coordinate with our Public Works Maintenance Department with regard to the specifications on protecting our trees. Sewer cleaning and inspection work is going well along Cerrito Creek and Adams Street and Pierce Street. This work is vital to prevent sewer system blockages and overflows, which could lead to damage to our local waterways. Lastly, the Adams Street project is scheduled to have paving begin this week. The project involves paving the block of Adams between Buchanan and Solano and replacing associated non-compliant curb ramps. And we hope to have that completed over the next several weeks. Be happy to answer any questions you have regarding my report items.
All right, thank you, City Manager. Bring it to council. Do you have any questions or comments? Councilmember Nason, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this wasn't one of the report items, but I'm concerned about the, now that we have outdoor dining opening up again, what is the status of the traffic calming for Solano Avenue?
Sure, I don't have information on that readily available this evening, but I'll be happy to follow up.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Any other council member? All right, it looks like we have 2 comments, and we will do a minute each for both, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jeremiah here. If possibly on the city's website, there's a link for the Berkeley Food Network. It's a food pantry on 9th Street and University. And the city's website hasn't been updated for quite a while on many things, but the hours are wrong with for the Berkeley Food Network. On Mondays and Wednesdays on the city's website, it says it's open from 5 to 7 p.m. But it's wrong. It's 5 to 6:30 p.m. because the Berkeley Food Network has winter pantry hours. and they're different than the summertime. So if you show up at, 6:45, due to the city's website, it's open till 7, you're not going to get any food. So I was just hoping that maybe you guys could update the Berkeley Food Network pantry hours to the winter pantry hours, Mondays and Wednesdays from 5 to 6:30, please. And I think the address is 1925 9th Street. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Hi, this is Amy. Amy Smolens. I'd like to follow up on Councilmember Nason's question about the traffic calming. Just to reiterate, you guys, in July of last year, you directed staff to install traffic calming signage, and the business owners have asked about this many times. Traffic goes too fast on Solano Avenue, as Jeremiah did say. And then on December 21st, in your meeting, staff said they would install 4 signs. That's not sufficient. The parklets span 16 blocks from Ordway to San Pablo and 10 different blocks. So 4 signs won't slow traffic down in any meaningful way. It's been 7 months since you directed staff to do this. So please do this and do it so it's, excuse me, so it's comprehensive and sufficient and actually does slow motor vehicle traffic down. So so staff and customers will be safer in those outdoor dining parklets. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Looks like there's no additional comments. Did council or anyone want to respond? Nope. All right. Now we're going to move to our presentations. We're at item number 9. We're going to start with 9.1 with the presentation from Berkeley Food and Housing.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council members. The item before you this evening is a presentation on Albany Project Hope by Berkeley Food and Housing Project, which I will reference as BFHP moving forward. By the city since 2003, navigation, housing, and prevention services to individuals and families experiencing homelessness in Albany. BFHP staff is here tonight to present. I will go over the staff report briefly and then turn it over to them for their presentation. So using housing first and harm reduction principles in combination with intensive and responsive housing navigation case management services, BFHP has been able to house and retain housing for people who had been chronically homeless. A housing first philosophy holds that people's need for housing is a basic need that should be met as quickly as possible without any preconditions. Albany Project Hope is staffed by 1 supervisory case manager and 1 housing navigator. The supervisor case manager and housing navigator collaborate with Albany Cares staff, the police department, and other social services providers to support people experiencing homelessness in Albany, and attend a monthly client case conference hosted by the city's Neighborhood Services Division. Outreach is conducted on weekdays using a defined outreach route incorporating key sites such as the community center, the senior center, the area around the Safeway store, behind the Target store, Albany Hill, the shower program, and the Albany Aquatic Center before COVID, Solano and San Pablo Avenues, the Albany Greenway, and any other areas as needed, along with opportunities to reach out to clients that are identified as in need of assistance by City of Albany employees. Each time housing navigators engage a person, they offer an assessment, any available options in shelter, work towards permanent housing solution and other priority needs, and they will also make key referrals to mainstream services. The city is using a combination of general funds and grant funds, including Homeless Emergency Aid Program, to provide motel stays during the pandemic, rapid rehousing subsidies, landlord incentives, flexible housing subsidies for move-in costs, and housing prevention assistance. Other funding sources used by BFHP include the Housing Resource Center Flex Funds to assist with motel stays and move-in costs. The first and second quarterly reports of fiscal year 2020-2021 have been included with the staff report to provide additional background information on the work performed by the BFHP supervisor, case manager, and housing navigator from July 1st to December 31, 2020. So I'm happy to answer any question or turn it over to BFHP staff to present the information they have prepared for you this evening. So if there are no questions, then I will turn it over to Angela is ready, I think.
Sorry, too soon maybe, huh?
I think we probably people do have questions, but maybe it makes more sense to ask the questions at the end of the presentation.
That Councilmember Nason and I would agree. So if they would present, we'll bring it to the council to ask questions, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Colleen Egan, Executive Director of Berkeley Food and Housing Project. Thank you for inviting us to join you this evening. Berkeley Food and Housing Project has been in operations for 51 years. This past year, we served 3,000 clients across 6 counties, including Alameda, Contra Costa, Solano, Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Amador, and served 40,000 hot meals in Alameda County. Our mission is to ease and end the crisis of homelessness within our communities. I would now like to introduce my colleagues, Angela Upshaw, Associate Director of Programs, and Angelina Roman, Supervisory Case Manager of Albany Project Hope, who are going to provide an overview of our work within the city of Albany. Thanks, Colleen. I just want to make sure everyone can see the slides because I'm doing this new trying to share at full screen. Are you able to see the current slide that shares our mission or no?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So our Albany Project Hoped, our purpose is to give everyone the opportunity to regain their dignity as a human being, along with helping them to regain that hope for a future. We know people experiencing homelessness often lose hope. And so our agency, our program, we work to hold that hope and pass it on when they're ready to be able to accept it once they regain housing. So this is just an overview of our pathway from homelessness to housing within the Project Hope program. So it starts off with referrals, and that comes from a variety of resources, our partners, the police department, and other individuals, which brings our team to conduct street outreach to engage that person into services. And then we conduct an intake and help gather documents. We complete a coordinated entry assessment and provide intensive and wraparound case management for that individual, with the outcome of helping them to obtain permanent supportive housing.
Excuse me, are you supposed to be showing different slides? All we're seeing
You
is
don't see it? Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to redo this because I was trying to make it full screen and maybe that's not going to work for me here. So it may not be as beautiful, but I will just do it this way then.
Looks great. Thanks,
Okay.
Angela.
You'll have to see the little small side view, but at least then you'll be able to see everything I'm showing you. Okay, so I apologize. So this is what I was saying, the pathway from homelessness to housing. And as I mentioned, referrals that we receive, and our team conducts outreach, collecting documents and intake, doing the coordinated entry assessment, and then providing wraparound and intensive case management services with the outcome and a goal for permanent supportive housing. So when we say housing document ready, we are working intensively with each of our clients to make sure that they're ready for permanent supportive housing. Upon outreach case management, we assess each client with 2 goals in mind. We are looking to complete the coordinated entry assessment through Alameda County. And this assessment helps to place that person on the by name list. The acronym is BNL, which allows them access to permanent supportive housing. Our second goal is to help this client obtain 5 documents: identification, social security cards, disability verification, homeless verification, and income verification. These are all required for eligibility for permanent supportive housing. And so once we obtain these documents, we submit them to our partners at Homestretch, and they're uploaded into our Clarity, which is the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. Just wanted to share some highlights on demographics of the clients that we're serving. One thing that stood out was gender. So traditionally, when we're speaking of single adults experiencing homelessness, we see they are traditionally majority male. However, in Albany, we noticed that during our outreach efforts, most are female. We have 55.5% are female compared to 44% being male. Among those who actually receive case management and housing navigation services, and that's just really on that person's choice. And we see that that is decreased by the females by 43% and male is 53%. The other demographic I wanted to highlight is race. And so there's no new picture here. We see traditionally across the board and all of our populations that African Americans are overrepresented in the population of homelessness, whereas as a population, it ranges from 11 to 13%. However, as we see here in those experiencing homelessness just in Albany, it's 55% with our outreach, and then 43% of those actually receiving housing navigation and case management services. So an overrepresentation there. I am going to have my colleague, Angelina, jump on and share about our Albany outreach approach and how we are unique and different in our work in the city of Albany. Angelina?
Hello, everyone. So our approach with our outreach, first we conduct engagement, and that is key. That gets, that's the key to making a good first impression on every individual that we come in contact with. Then I'm sorry, I cannot see the screen.
Oh, let me make it bigger. It's my fault. I apologize. I can't make
Okay,
it
that's
full
better.
screen,
That's
so-
better right there. Then we can be consistent and respectful to every individual that we come in contact or attempt to come in contact with. We're not always successful, but consistency in showing up over and over allows the individual to get familiar with our faces. And then they also start to begin to trust a little bit, to say, hey, they keep coming back, so maybe they can provide some help. And that goes along with building trust. And once that trust starts to build, then we can begin to talk to them about homeless housing services, documents that we may need, like their IDs, social security cards. Then once we start having that conversation with them, we can start discussing shelter and their basic needs. So then we can offer them a motel, which would be a temporary stay. And then we can go from there, collecting their documents and getting them housing ready. And what that does is that helps us to be able to start looking for units for them if they're housing ready, and if they're accepting of it. And then we can consider rapid rehousing for each individual, or we can look into other things. We can get them connected with family members. There's a whole variety. So neighborhood and community referrals. We get a lot of referrals with our partner, Albany Police Department. We get a lot of emails about the different individuals that are in different areas. And once we get those referrals, I go ahead and get our outreach team out there to go and talk to them, to offer them services. We're not always successful, but we continue to do it until we can become successful. Our outreach team is pretty diligent. Then we also get our referrals from the Albany Cares program. And once we get those, we usually make a phone call and or go out to the community where they may be. Partnerships and motels. So during COVID, we've had to build a lot of relationships with motel owners. One of the, actually two of the owners that we have built big relationships with are the Roadway Inn and Travel Lodge in Berkeley on University. We've been able to reserve rooms for uncertain lengths of time for our clients. We've been able to pay by check. They've given me invoices, and then I've been able to request, and they've waited. They've trusted that they are going to get their payment. We also partnered with Safer Ground, and we were able to house 7 people. Well, we were able to shelter in place, 7 individuals. At this moment, we currently have 7 through our Safer Ground motel voucher program. We also have another 7 that we have been able to go ahead and connect with HRC Flex Funds, which is another partner resource program that we are connected with, and pay for those motels, seeing how we used all of our heat funding. And we've also been able to submit six referrals to mental health services for 6 of our clients through Lifelong. Thinking outside the box. So as I mentioned before, we are using our partnering programs with their funding resources. It's Flex Funds, and what that does is we submit a referral, and they pretty much will pay for anything for us, for our clients, as long as they are in the system. They have an assessment. The need is based on housing or sheltering in place. And each individual through that funding gets $8,000. And so far I've been able to put clients in for two to 2.5 months with that amount. We've also had a really big issue with people not being connected with medical services, and medical documents, disability verifications are a huge requirement for permanent housing through HUD standards. So what we were able to do was we were able to connect with some student nurses, and they came to the Safer Ground motels, and they were able to meet with the clients and sign off on their disability verification letters. And with that, we were able to get several of our clients that received permanent supportive housing matches. We were able to get them document ready, and several have already received their permanent housing through that. Successes since March 2020, COVID-19 response. When COVID hit, we scrambled. We were able to use our heat funding, and with that, from March 2020 to now, we have been able to place 36 people in the motels and get them off of the streets, make sure that they were safe and secure and not in contact or in danger of getting COVID. Out of those 36, we have rapidly rehoused 8 clients. Out of that 36, again, we have been able to permanently house 4 of the clients, and 16 of those have received permanent supportive housing matches. So they're on their way to get their permanent housing. We just have different steps that we need to take with them. Some of them just got all their documents in. Some of them are waiting for meetings with the housing authority. So they're all, it's coming along. Our Albany house. Our Albany house has been pretty successful. It's a temporary home for individuals who experience chronic homelessness. 6 clients have cycled through with 2 permanently housed. What our case manager does is she has worked with them, we've done cooking classes. We have taught them how to use the washing machine and dryer. We've taught them how to clean their rooms, how to clean the bathrooms and the kitchen. Excuse me. We've also taught them some life skills on their own personal hygiene. And we've taken them and taught them how to make grocery lists and do some grocery shopping. So they could take those skills when they are permanently housed and on their own. Excuse me. Client success story. Excuse me one moment. Okay. This individual has been homeless in Albany for over 15 years. Through the years, several outreach staff have attempted to connect with no success. Albany Project Hope has finally been successful with providing services for this individual. This client has been in a motel for 3 to 4 months through Safer Ground Motel Voucher Program. The case manager has successfully helped this client obtain his ID and has helped him get an income. He is now on general assistance and he is receiving CalFresh. He also has received a permanent supportive housing match through Homestretch, and we are continuing to work on his documents. So we just applied for his Social Security card, and I just got a letter today that it's coming in the mail. Our case manager also continues to work with him on, we're going to work next with his birth certificate. And so once we get that, then we can submit that. And he also has been connected with Lifelong. So he is now getting medical services on a regular. BFHP is heaven sent. So this is from a client that we recently housed through permanent supportive housing. He was so grateful that when he opened the door to his unit, it brought him to tears. And that was the first comment that he made. So it was very, it was very wonderful to see how our services could help individuals who really need it and help them succeed, and how grateful they are.
Thanks, Angelina. That's awesome. Thank you. So we'll open it up for any questions that the council or any visitors have. That's it.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Berkeley Food and Housing Project, for your presentation. You can go ahead and unshare your screen for now. We appreciate you coming in, sharing this information. We will start with the council with questions, and I would like to start first with a few questions that I have. Is that okay? All right. So as I went through the information that you guys provided, it showed that there were individuals housed in Alameda, Oakland, Berkeley, and Richmond. However, I don't see any housed in Albany. And so I would like to know why. And you can go ahead and answer that first.
Yeah, and Angelina, feel free to jump in if you want, but our understanding is that we're just looking for any affordable and sustainable housing. And so oftentimes we're finding that in different areas within the Bay Area. And so we're just always looking for something that we can make sure our clients are able to sustain and afford on their own. And so we're looking for other resources in other areas that may have more affordable housing. And as you know, the crisis in the Bay Area is so great that we often have to go outside of the main regions to find that affordability.
Okay. And I noticed that you said that there is landlord incentives encouraging property owners to rent to people. So how has that been utilized here with the property owners in Albany to get them or to encourage them to rent to those that are unhoused?
Angela, I would like to go ahead and answer that.
Yeah.
I am the person that goes out and finds landlords. In my experience, I have found one landlord in Albany. I was very close to housing somebody, and then the day before, the landlord owner contacted me and said that he had decided that he would not move forward. I have not had very much success with Albany landlords or owners of any properties. That is why we have gone outsourced to other cities and worked with landlords and owners that will work with us and the clientele that we have. We use the landlord incentives just as an incentive of thank you for working with us.
And Mayor, just to add to that, the incentive is always offered to whomever we might be potentially working with.
Okay, and what does that incentive entails? Like, can it be arranged from? I understand that, you do help them with basic needs, trying to get funding for them to get housed and stay housed. But when you're offering incentive, what does that entail? I guess, what is your approach to, possibly seeking assistance or working with property owners here in Albany?
So what we do is, if I see a for rent sign, I usually call the numbers and ask if I could speak with either the owner or the landlord property manager. Most times I get, if it's a property manager, that they do not work with third-party programs.
Okay. And the reason why I'm questioning this is because the client that you have been able to work with and get, his out of your success story, I won't go into much detail. We all heard. He's been in Albany for a while, and usually when people are unhoused in cities, they get acclimated to the environment. So my concern is if we're not getting him housed here, that could cause some type of additional mental instability for him, because he knows Albany, he's around, and so that would be my concern, and I would want to know what would be the approach to making sure and to ensure that we start exploring the options and maybe working with property owners to get people in Albany where they're used to the community, and they just simply looking for housing. So, that's my concern. And I would like to know more on how we can go about working with the property owners here in Albany to do so.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say to that, I had the same concern for this individual, and I then thought that if we were able to, we moved him to Berkeley. So what he does is he goes back to Albany every morning, and then by the evening he goes back to his room. And I felt that would help acclimate him to being away from Albany, knowing that he could go back and visit whenever he felt like. And so far it's been successful, and he has He does. That's what he does, and he's had no complaints.
And if I can just add, Mary Gary, you make a great point, and that's something we're seeing across the board of making sure that we can try our best to house people in the communities that they're from, that they're familiar with, that they're used to. And I think we'd be more than open with any advice from the council or the members of the city of how we can better engage landlords and maybe address some of their concerns that they have with housing our clients, and how we can do what we can do to mitigate those risks and those concerns and better engage them. I know other communities, they do implement landlord mitigation risk funds where they're having a large sum of money available, which are not often used, but just available for landlords that they know if their units are damaged, they know they have a safety net or security fund for that. But we'd be more than happy to hear any advice or suggestions that we can take back and better engage our landlords in the city of Albany to help those long-term residents stay where they're used to and comfortable with those resources and where they're familiar. But that's a great
and I agree. And communication, like you said, is key. Me being, unhoused for a period of time, I went to where I knew was safe. When I slept in my car, I went back to an area that I had been accustomed to living. So you're absolutely right. Those things can pose some type of, discouragement. People want to be where they know. They want to be acclimated to where they live, where they used to live. So those are things we can discuss, but I will digress. Councilmember Nason, I believe you have a question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I was a little confused by the numbers in the slides and wanted to be sure that I understood. The number of people who were homeless in Albany who were sheltered during COVID. There was one slide that made me think it was 13, and there was another slide that made me think it was 30. How many? The last point in time count 2 years ago had us at 35 unsheltered people in Albany, and I was curious how many you found as at the time when we started locking down and trying to urgently get people into temporary shelter, and how many, and were they all temporarily sheltered?
Thank you, Councilmember Nason. I can share that slide if it's helpful, or just quickly share that, and I will do that actually, I apologize. So we stated that we had housed 36 or placed temporarily into housing 36 clients into motels. Mm-hmm. And so if I can just kind of back up a little bit, the point in time count, it just really shows a snapshot of how many people are experiencing homelessness at that point in time of the night. It doesn't always encompass the full range of people who are experiencing homelessness, because again, it's just that point in time. And we know people can, be in different places or just moving in different areas within this Bay Area. So this is what we were able to do in our program. And of course, we're not serving the entire, population. There's people who are, working with other programs or maybe, moving between the different cities. But we placed 36 people into hotels. 8 of those were rapidly rehoused, 4 into permanent housing, and 16 are moving towards being able to be permanently housed as well.
Okay,
that
so
kind of cover a little bit. Mm-hmm.
8 and the 4 and the 16, those are not cumulative with the 36. Those are all people who are counted in the 36.
Yes, this is all part of that. Some of them some of it does overlap. There are duplicates there. Yes.
Okay, well, the number placed in motels is almost exactly the number that was counted in the point in time count, which makes me
very close. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Very close.
Close to getting everyone who was homeless at the outset of the COVID lockdown into motels.
And that's pretty impressive to be that accurate. I know most other cities and jurisdictions are not as accurate as Albany was from that. Yeah. Thank you.
And then I just have a point of personal curiosity that, well, I'll just ask it in general. Does Lifelong help with dental? Because I know that one of the individuals who's been discussed, I had talked with him a few times about dental issues. Was he able to get help with that?
I believe
They-
they do dental. Angela,
I'm sorry.
you know, if he was
Yes,
able to-
yeah, they do offer dental services. So we are just in the process of them getting their first physical. So that's coming.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor Jordan, I believe you're next.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the report and even more for the work. Definitely touching and also hard and wonderful to hear about. The rapidly rehoused was a capitalized term, so I presume that's a term with gravity with a defined meaning. I'm not familiar with the term, so if you could define it for me, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So rapid rehouse, and I apologize, we throw out all these different terms and acronyms. It's just really quickly getting someone into housing as a housing first model and then stabilizing them. So it's either stabilizing them there in that unit or moving them into a unit that is wrapped around with permanent supportive housing and case management services. So it's just quickly getting folks into units off of the streets to secure them and to get them stable and out of that housing crisis. And that's why we use that terminology, rapidly rehousing, as opposed to our traditional model in this field where we're trying to make sure that people are, reducing their substance use or, whatever other addictions and mental health services first before they get housing. We're thinking housing first, get them into units, and then wrap them around with the services that are going to be able to keep them there. And we've noticed that that's much more effective.
And so on the slide, there was of the 36 to 8 rapidly rehoused and 4 permanently housed. Were the 4 part of the 8, or is that a separate 4 of those 36?
So the 4 are part of permanent supportive housing. So that's permanent. The 8 are more of, part of them are part of the Albany house, which we use as a transitional house, which is really getting folks off of the streets or out of the hotels into a transition setting and preparing them for that permanent housing.
Yeah, so on the Albany house, if I may continue, Albany house in quotes, since it's not in Albany.
Sure.
When you're searching for landlords to work with, is it in all those domains, searching both for the transitional housing possibilities, searching for rapid rehousing, searching for permanent housing? It's the whole suite, and you're not getting any traction on any of them, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately, you're correct.
Okay. There is a group that I've spoken to a couple of times called Albany Property Rights Advocates, and it might be an interesting group to. They actually have a website. It might be an interesting group to outreach to. It's a group of property owners that rent residences, and I mean, as you can tell from their name, they're interested in protecting the rights of property owners, but I also get a sense that they do have a progressive element to their ethos. So, and I'd be happy to try to help and facilitate with that in any way that I could.
Well, we would love an introduction if you wouldn't mind. Absolutely.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. I have one other question. I want to talk about funding. I know you brought that up in one of the slides. And so my question is, where does that funding come from? I know that our governor has budgeted millions, maybe billions to fight homelessness. So I want to see, have we been able to tap into that funding? Has it come down to us? How are we utilizing, if have that information? And that may be something I need to ask the assistant city manager as well.
I don't want to step over you, Isabel, if you.
Yeah.
So the BFHP contract is funded with HEAP funds, which is the Homeless Assistance Program from the state. And this is a set amount of funding that came down from the state to the county and assigned to the cities per formula. And we also use community development block grant funding, which is a federal funding source to provide some for the contract as well. And then also general fund is used. And we've also used in the past another county grant fund, which was called the Immediate Impact Grant Fund. So whenever the county has resources that are coming, usually federal or state resources go to the county first, and then the county decides how they're gonna distribute that funding. Often cities have to apply for it, or sometimes it's a formula, and we pretty much always have to apply to receive the funding, and then we are committed to receiving the funding, and then in exchange we have to provide data, and we work with BFHP to provide that information.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Tiedemann, go ahead, and then Councilmember McQuaid.
So thank you for that presentation and for all the work. I know from firsthand experience how emotionally draining and difficult this work can be, so we really appreciate it. My question is a little bit more open-ended, which is just how, in your all professional opinions, can a city like Albany help your work further? And if the answer is essentially, find more money to give to the program, that's a reasonable response. But if there's any other, things that are on the ideal wish list that make your job easier and more effective, I'd be curious what they are.
Thanks, Council Member. I would say, funding always brings more robust services. So that's always number one. Number two, I think, on this topic of providing housing within Albany, if there are connections at the council level that you feel like you would like to make introductions on our behalf, we would very much welcome that. We have been operational in Albany for quite some time and have really tried to make an effort to partner with local landlords to provide housing in Albany, and it is quite challenging. So any sort of partnership that we could form with any of you, we'd greatly appreciate. I think those would be the two top wish list items. Angelina, feel free to jump in if you have any more.
I think you covered it well. Angelina, do you have anything else?
I think it was everything I would have asked for.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you. Councilmember McQuaid?
Thank you. And to all of you, thank you for this very comprehensive report and for all the work that you're doing. So people that are living in their cars, where do they fit into this equation? Are they a separate category? Are they just, in your mind, just part of the unhoused community, or how do you look at them?
It's a great question, Councilmember. They are a part of the data that we showed. They're a part of our outreach efforts, a part of the referrals, and so they are included in that. Absolutely.
And am I correct from looking at the data that there are no children or families in Albany considered to be unhoused?
No, that wouldn't be accurate. We're just not working with children and families. We refer all of those families to Family Front Door. And that's how we're making sure that they're served through that agency, that program. They're just referred out.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the agency?
Family Front Door.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, not the agency.
And when I look at the two reports that we had, there were 28 people in the first quarter and 32 people in the second quarter. I'm assuming at the end of the first quarter that those 28 people aren't removed from the services, and then we get another group of 32. So how much overlap is there? Or
Yeah, great question. No, there are some duplicates. There are about 12 duplicated from that first quarter that are carried over to the second quarter. So 12 of those are counted over or recounted. Okay. And then we have about 10 that were housed from that first quarter.
Great. Would you say that as we go through COVID and the numbers, I assume, are going up, they're going up everywhere. Mm-hmm. Are we going up relatively proportionate to what you're hearing in other areas of the county, other counties? Are we growing at a higher rate? Do you have any idea?
It would be hard to speak to that at this moment. I think what we could say is that given the population of Albany in comparison to Berkeley or Oakland or other cities that we're operational in, it's actually seemed pretty even. But again, hard to speak to just because we're not, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, we're almost a year into it. So we'll actually have some pretty good data to pull once, we hit next month, but it's sort of hard to speak to at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the only other thing I would say is, I certainly agree with, I was going to suggest what Vice Mayor Jordan suggested of working with the Albany property rights people. I think that might be at least a good start. And I'm sure that we could all work together on that.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now I'll open it up for public comment.
Hi, I'm on Zillow right now, and there's 8 apartments for rent underneath $2,000. Is that the income cap, $2,000?
Monthly, not for the population we're serving. 2,000 is pretty high for the folks we're trying to serve. But then in addition to that, once you see a unit that's available, there's additional requirements that are needed. They're usually looking at renter's history. They're looking at their income. They're looking at multiple.
Thanks. Hold on just 1 second. I got limited time here.
Oh, sorry.
Well, there's 8 right here on Zillow. I'm just wondering, what out of these 8 have you talked to? I mean, have you called any of these landlords here on Zillow? I mean, there's 8 right now. Also, is Berkeley food and housing? So you talk a lot about housing, but what about the food? Are you in cahoots with Berkeley Food Pantry, Berkeley Food Network? So you're putting people in houses and you're putting people in hotels, but are you making sure they're fed every day? That's another question. Also, just wondering what kind of food you're supplying to these people. If you're not providing food, it just doesn't make sense because you're Berkeley food and housing. Let's see here. Do you guys check behind Sprouts as part of your route? I know you said community center, Safeway, behind Target. I just didn't hear you say behind Sprouts. Maybe you could check that more frequently. Also, what is your program doing on showers? If you can't put people in houses, at least are you able to provide resources for people to take a shower? And what resources are you offering? Also, let's see here. Yeah, because you said you're teaching people how to do grocery shopping, but that encourages them to go spend money they don't have. They're already homeless. So why don't you teach them resources like food banks? Because the food's there and it's free. So why don't you encourage not to teach people how to go spend money and go grocery shopping, but teach people how to be resourceful and go hit up the food banks? I mean, that would make more sense to me. And are you supplying masks for these people you're providing houses with for COVID-19? Are you providing masks? And also, can you do a presentation? This is a wonderful presentation. Can you also do a presentation to the Social and Economic Justice Commission? It's a new commission, there's new people, and I think the SEJC deserves a wonderful presentation from you guys. There's a meeting tomorrow night, but it might be too soon. And are you connecting people with jobs to get back to work? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, please.
Evening, this is Corey Dosty. I just wanted to say this is all, it looks wonderful, and thank you very much. I definitely agree about it's probably very difficult to find landlords. It's very interesting and useful to hear about the Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund, and whatever you think might be helpful, and I'm sure that it's an ongoing, evolving, figuring out. My question is, around gender competent services. So you have at least one non-binary or gender non-conforming person, which is very cool that you were able to identify that they felt confident enough to self-disclose. I know that getting ID cards can be a huge issue because Social Security is still only male and female. And if a person wants to be able to change their name or to present in a way that doesn't match with their name, that can be a huge issue with getting housed. So I don't know if you've had experience with that. A Transgender Law Center is here in San Francisco and is really great. And they have resources around name change clinics, and I'm sure they'd love to help. If you're not aware of that resource, you might be. But also I wanted to bring up the gender categories that you have. Having male and female and then trans male and trans female is confusing to me because I am not sure if male and female is everyone male and female, and then trans male is only people who are trans male, right? So if you're trying to say cis male or non-trans male and then trans male, you should be more specific about that, because just saying male, trans male people are a subset of male people, right? So just in terms of respect around gender, trans people are the gender that they are. They just are also trans. So the way that you've done those number categories is not best practice. And I can talk more about that. I have a lot of experience with it. But really, thank you so much for all that you're doing. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Next person, please.
Hello, Council, and hello, Berkeley Food and Housing. This is Judy Kerr. I am a volunteer with the Albany Cares program. I'm also a former member of the Social and Economic Justice Commission. And I just want to commend Berkeley Food and Housing for an excellent presentation and really good information about what services have been provided and what is available in the city of Albany. But I also want to raise the question of how much of the housing in Albany is controlled by the University of California at Berkeley, and how much they are contributing to the homeless housing issue. The city of Albany is very much supportive of the University of California at Berkeley and provides services through the school district and through the city and through the streets and urban support and all sorts of things. But it occurs to me that this is a missing piece in our efforts to support individuals within our community who are facing housing challenges. And I wonder, when we are in the process of looking at 800 graduate students being housed across from the city hall in the city of Albany, whether the University of California and Governor Newsom and the state of California and Bucky Wicks and Nancy Skinner are really stepping up with their resources to actually provide for housing for individuals within the city of Albany who are at risk for homelessness. And I don't know who within the city council can address those issues, but I trust that there is a communication system which would be useful. And I trust that the individuals who've been elected at the council will step up and will make that voice heard. But the individual property owners within the city of Albany can step out and do all they can to help individuals to provide housing. And certainly we can do more with our outreach, but a lot of the housing and a lot of the land control in the city of Albany is within the University of California control. And we need to look at how our policies address that and look at how our policies with the state and with the University of California have been somewhat negligent in terms of addressing homelessness and housing inequity in the state.
Thank you for your comment, Judy. Next, please.
Hi, I also would like to thank you for the presentation and for the hard work that you all are all doing and your concern about people experiencing homelessness. I want to reiterate what Mayor Gary said about people being housed outside of the city where they consider home. And I'm thinking maybe it would be possible for there to be a series of educational programs for the public, so that maybe, and including the landlords, so that they would get over the idea that somebody who's experiencing homelessness is dangerous, to, you know, kind of dispel some of the myths. And I know that for example, property values, people think property values go down, but if you have a transitional housing unit or house, but they actually don't go down. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation I think would be really helpful. Maybe work with the library, work with the city, work with SEJC, work with CMAC, just really try to get information out. I wanted to also support what Corey said about the categories for gender. And I think the mistake instead of archaic language, and I think you could just take off the parentheses after trans female and after trans male, because I think that's the confusion. It's kind of an old fashioned way of expressing it that you have on there. And then I just have some general concerns about the language on these graphs. And I don't know what, maybe this is some sort of something that you get from higher up, but I just wanted to point out, like using, let's see, mental health problem chart. That's just such a non-person centered, trauma-informed way of putting it, mental health problem. And also the fact that when people don't answer the question, that it says client refused, whereas if you were asking somebody who was housed, you would probably allow them to say decline to answer. So I would encourage you to kind of put this in a more positive way and more people-centered. Substance abuse, there are other terms that are being used now rather than substance abuse, and that is a lot less negative and don't carry the stigma that comes with these terms. And then I have a question, which is just the money part of it. I know that I heard that it was the general fund. This is from Isabel, HEAP funds and CDBG funds. And I was wondering if could somebody say how much money that is? So, and do you feel that what you're able to accomplish is that the money is, I know it's your work and I know you're doing a really great job and working hard, but how does the money balance with how many people you're actually able to house? I guess that's my question. And then with the rapid rehousing, I know one of the cons of rapid rehousing is that unless people find housing, they can end up back out of housing. And I was wondering if that was happening to some of the people that are rapidly rehousing, if they're ending up actually unhoused again, because that's the downside to rapid rehousing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I believe Judy was the last one. Okay, I'll bring it back to council for any final discussions or response to any comments that were made in public comment. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll just reiterate some of the questions that community members brought up. Thank you very much. Community member brought up that it's Berkeley Food and Housing Project. So obviously the focus this evening was on the housing side, but maybe a few words on the food side. You can give us a presentation on that, but that might be helpful.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, did you want us to share about what we do for food? I apologize.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't. I guess I wasn't good. Yes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I apologize. I spoke out of line earlier. Yes, go ahead.
So as I mentioned, we did serve 40,000 hot meals in Alameda County last fiscal year. We do provide a community meal every day at the steps of our Dwight Way shelter located on Dwight Way in Berkeley. It's a to-go meal right now due to COVID. So there's one hot meal that's prepared and provided in a paper lunch bag, along with another meal that's typically like a sandwich, along with a dessert like cookies or pudding or brownies, anything that we can provide that will bring substance to our clients. As far as the clients that we are housing in our hotels and along with transitional housing, the hotel contract that we have with Alameda County, where most of the Albany clients are being housed does come with 3 meals per day. So they are receiving 3 meals per day. In our transitional housing program, which is what we call the Albany House, which yes, is located in Richmond, because we did find a Richmond landlord that was willing to work with us. When we say that we take them grocery shopping, it is based on resourcefulness as far as, you know, what their budget is, how we can assist them in identifying, you know, how they're going to make that budget work for them to provide food. So if that does require going to a food pantry, we ensure that that's part of it. Just providing the overall resources and independent living skills to make sure that they have them when we do move them on to a more permanent supportive housing option of living.
Colleen, I would like to add that those individuals also do receive CalFresh. So that is what they are using to do their grocery shopping with. And our case manager has connected with a food bank, and every Wednesday she delivers boxes to rapid rehoused individuals and the Albany House, as well as the motel. She gives them non-perishables.
Thank you. And then there was a question about connection to jobs, and I don't know if that's in your remit or not.
So Berkeley Food and Housing Project, we do have an employment program that is dedicated to our veterans that's funded through the VA. Our contract with the city of Albany does not include, job training or job placement. However, we do have a pretty robust relationship with local employers. So if we do know that there would be a good placement, we would definitely recommend it. But that is definitely an aspect to the work that we do have experience in doing, which is vocational training, job development, job placement, and retention.
And I also would like to add that we currently do have 3 clients in the motels that do have jobs. One of them actually just got a job. And so we're working on building up their finances.
So this might relate to one of the other questions, which was how much funding does your program receive, I guess, from Albany specifically? And it sounds like at least there's one gap potentially that's been identified. I don't know if cities tend to fund a part of the job placement and training program or not.
Well, the current contract went before council in June of 2020, and it's a 2-year contract. I can pull it up if you'd like me to go over the dollar amount for the specific dollar amount, but because of this contract is different than all the other contract that we've had in the past because we've received HEAP funds. So it's a much larger contract than we've had in the past. And of course, the funding has not been necessarily used in the way that we had anticipated because of COVID. So, we weren't expecting to put so many people in motel rooms so quickly. So it's not a typical year. It's not a typical year in a typical contract. But I'm happy to pull the report if you give me a few minutes to go over the dollar amounts, if that's.
I guess at the pleasure of the rest of the council, it's me asking questions. I don't know if others are interested. Given that you gave me the pointer to the June agendas, I can go off and find it myself if others aren't interested in that level of detail. But I guess to the question of the, since it came up that the program does provide in other jurisdictions job skills training, job placement, and you sound like you're doing that just because you have those skills anyway. How is that component of your work typically funded in other jurisdictions?
So that is funded, and excuse me, I said it was through the VA. It's actually through the Department of Labor, and we are able to provide those services within Alameda County, specifically to veterans. So if we were to identify a veteran who qualified for those services within Albany, we absolutely could serve them in that capacity.
Yeah, I was interested in seeing the demographics. If I understood from the quarterly reports that the clients you've had contact with, among them were no veterans, if I saw that correct. And I'm not sure I did, but there was a pie chart that they'd say a line for veterans, meaning no veterans.
Yeah, that was correct, Vice Mayor.
Okay. That's somewhat atypical, isn't it? From at least
Well,
what I've read as a general reader.
Well, it could be a part of we have a robust supportive services for veteran families program that operates out of Alameda County, and they do a lot of street outreach. And so it's possible that they've been able to reach all of the veterans that are unsheltered. It's been around since 2013, and they do cover a large area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Jordan. Now, I was wondering if staff could potentially do research on how we have this Albany House in Richmond. How can we have some of these services here? The same that's being, I understand, I believe Angela or Angelina stated that there was only one landlord that was willing to work with them in that aspect. But, I wonder if it's possible if we can have something here in Albany and work with landlords, or even see how we could fund something to be here that will help our residents here instead of taking them to Richmond and other places. Just a thought. I think we should probably look into some kind of way we can provide those services here in our city.
Absolutely, and looking forward to seeing how we could partner with council members. I think if we, if there was a strong backing from this group, I think we could potentially find more support from local landlords within Albany.
I think so too, and it's simply just communicating, letting them know what's out there. And one of the public members, she was absolutely right. We have to change the narrative about what landlords and people think of people that are homeless. Not all homeless people have issues. It's just down on their luck, and then they're just looking for a place to stay. So I think if we educate and communicate effectively, we could have places here for you guys to place those that are in need. So any other questions before we wrap up the presentation? And thank these wonderful ladies for joining us this evening. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Did you catch my ear that I think it said mental health is provided through Lifelong Medical? And is that part of the contract that Albany has with the program? Or is that separately funded? And I think part of the reason I'm interested in that is because, as you probably know, Albany's in a mental health service flux at the moment, to put it maybe kindly.
Well, I'll just share, originally we were working through Berkeley Mental Health, and when that partnership ended, we were able to build a relationship with Lifelong. And so I think we've been referring through Lifelong since October of 2020. And it's just a referral. It's not necessarily any fund-based. It's just referring clients there for assistance. And some of the folks we kind of serve, they actually are already working with Lifelong. So then it's not necessarily a referral. That's why you see the referral numbers are, I think we said about 6. We just started referring in October, and some people that we are engaging with have already been working with Lifelong. Yeah.
Okay.
And so just to be clear, that's separately funded, so you're referring them to Lifelong, where Lifelong gets its funding through some other.
Yeah,
yes.
Lifelong covers it all. Yeah, we just refer them to services. Yeah, absolutely.
So they're another nonprofit entity that provides medical, dental, mental health services that Berkeley Food and Housing Project has been partnered with for quite a long time. And we've been very strongly partnered with them throughout COVID. And that's, so we're able to refer to them, but it's a completely different funding stream.
Okay.
Mary Carey,
All right.
I'll add one more thing. I know
Okay.
There was a few members that mentioned the gender question. And I just
Okay.
wanted to share that we just utilize data through the Homeless Management Information System. And so those categories and titles are just what HUD implemented for that platform. And so it's not like a different, pull out from Berkeley Food and Housing Project. It's just used from that Homeless Management Information System. Those are the categories that they're using, but we absolutely do appreciate that feedback, and hopefully that can get up to HUD and they can make some changes.
Vice Mayor Jordan, are we gonna wrap this up?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, but so just to clarify that, so is male, as in the reports, is male only cis, or is male cis and trans, and then trans is a subset of the male category?
So in HMIS, it will show male, female, or trans, male to female, or female to male. That's what it shows. Or it says refuse. Those are all just categories that HUD has placed into that system.
Okay, so in the HUD world, male means cis male. Is that correct?
Probably. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm getting confused, but those are just the categories that they've put in there, and we have to choose. And it's all self-report. When we're engaging with those that we're serving, we're asking them the questions and they self-report.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you again for the presentation. Thank you, Assistant City Manager, for working and providing this information to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We look forward to working with you all.
Likewise.
All right. We will move to agenda item 9.2, which is the quarterly financial update. If I can get a staff report on that.
That's me. So I am bringing the second quarter financial for fiscal year 21. So that goes from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 21. And so in addition to what you normally see, where we're doing expenses and revenue, budget to actual, you're seeing the approved budget that was approved back in 2019. And then what we are proposing, now this was presented back in September, and council gave staff direction to kind of wait and see what was going on with COVID, because things were still up in the air. Not that, we have all of the answers now, I'm sure. And then we've also made a couple of changes now based on the taxes that passed and some other things that have come up. So you'll see adopted, proposed, and then another change from what you normally see is with the transition of treasurer, I am now presenting the account balances as of the end of the quarter for you as well. So I will go ahead and start my presentation. It's pretty short. Here we go. So this is just citywide, what you see on, I think it's page 2, the very top of it. And you'll see that we have our, the 2020 actual, 21 adopted budget, the 21 proposed budget that will go to you next council meeting for an actual vote. And then this is where we are year to date. And then these are the percentage of actual to budget for the adopted and then the proposed. Expenses are overall basically right at 50%. And then salaries and benefits are a little bit ahead. Our public safety overtime is because of COVID and absences and because of all of the wildfires. It's a little bit above where we would have expected it for now. Later on, I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then our other expenses are below that 50%, which is, what you want to see overall. Our revenues are down a little bit from where we'd want to see it, but we haven't made any of our transfers yet for our big transfer, mostly the pension override tax. And that's the one that is really going to bring that up. So this chart shows you year over year for the last 4 years, expenses on the left and then revenues on the right. And so you can see that expenses are, it looks like there's a big jump between last year and this year. There's a couple of things that go into that. The reworking of the public works budget is one of those things. And I'll talk about that again later. And then our increased pension unfunded liability cost. And then also we've had a pretty significant increase in our insurance deductibles. Revenues are slightly higher than where we were last year, so that is positive. So what we're really looking at, like I said before, the CalPERS UAL is the unfunded liability is going up significantly year over year. It will continue to go up, as I've said in the past, until it hits $5 million in 1 year in 2030. This year, we are planning on making a $500,000 additional payment. I'm in contact with CalPERS about how to best allocate that right now. That was budgeted. And that will come not out of the general fund, that'll come out of the pension tax. So that is not something that you're necessarily going to see as an expense, because the expenses that you're looking at are general fund expenses, and this will come out of his special revenue fund. Again, the cost increases are general liability insurance, salaries, MOU salary increases, and then the public safety overtime. As I said before, COVID, it's related to absences and needing to fill that, whether it's actual, COVID cases or whether it's just people people sheltering. What's the word? You understand. Because of potential exposure. And then the wildfires, we will get reimbursed for that overtime cost, but that reimbursement goes under revenues. So it's not going to decrease the expense. So you will see an over budgeted or overspent overtime line, but the revenue for mutual aid will also increase. And then in the proposed budget, the differences between adopted and proposed mainly include adding the pension UAL, the special revenue budget changes, and this is where we're talking about the public works. And you see that I always use the public works park maintenance budget as an example of this, because I think it really shows how before it was spread out over multiple funds, and it took a little while to figure out, okay, what exactly is our parks maintenance budget? Now it's all in one place, and we're using our special revenue funds as revenue sources. And you'll see the specific revenue source on that in that division budget. And then we've added in impacts due to COVID. The long-lasting impacts, so the sales tax revenue loss projections, but we haven't included any of the short-term impacts. For example, public safety overtime, we don't necessarily think that is going to last years and years and years. That's something that is just during this pandemic phase. So that wouldn't go into the budget. So it's really long-lasting impacts versus short-term. Oh, I skipped new taxes. This is the exciting part. I get to say a good thing. So the transfer tax increase was 100. You'll notice it will go up 150,000 for current year, which is fiscal year 2020-21. And because that started January 1st of 2021. Next year, next biennial budget, the increase to the revenues would be $300,000. The UUT doesn't go into effect until March or April, depending on when the utilities actually receive their letter in hand. So we are anticipating this year an increase of approximately $193,000. And then next year it'll go up to approximately $674,000. And then that is it for my presentation.
Thank you, Heather, for your presentation. Do we have a discussion with the council? Any questions, comments at this time? Okay, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thank you very much. The slide that shows expenses and revenues frightens me. Should I be frightened? I mean, you got the expenses just, you know, going up on a ramp, and I understand that there's some new, some accounting that's brought some of those special funds into the revenue side, but I don't see the revenue doing the same thing. So I'm not sure without digging into details, what's going on and how we keep going.
So that's something that we've been talking about for quite some time. I mean, between now and 2030, we're going to need to find another $3 million to fund unfunded pension liabilities. This is why, staff brought 3 proposed ballot measures for the November 2020 ballot. So you are correct that some of it is a change in accounting, but not all of it. We are budgeted at a deficit. We are now, I say that we won't necessarily realize a deficit because we know that we're underfunded or we're understaffed in police. So, a huge chunk of budget surplus each year has been police salary savings. But you'll see when you look at the current report that savings isn't going to be as much this year because we have filled some of those positions. So we are balancing expense cuts that we can do administratively with the new taxes and what we see as a need going forward. That'll be a very big, that'll be something that I'm really focusing on when I bring the biennial budget in probably May to you, saying, okay, what are our long-term expenses? We have our increasing pension costs. We need to start planning for asset replacements that aren't in the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan is infrastructure, really. But we have equipment, we have fire trucks, we have police vehicles, we have public works equipment. How do we fund that? So those are the things that we're going to need to start thinking about. At this point, yes, we are budgeted at a deficit.
And it doesn't seem like a 2030 problem because, as you say, well, even in the proposed budget, I think it was somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million projected deficit, of which you say all of that won't necessarily materialize. Is the thought that will come out of the reserve fund, which I don't know much about, and maybe that's what's coming next meeting, and I shouldn't get into that. Feel free to put me off.
I mean, that is something. Yeah, I mean, at this point, Nicole, I guess I'm gonna have you say what is current and what are we going to talk about next meeting?
Sure, this is your quarterly budget update, so I would encourage us to focus on that. We'll continue, as we've started through the pandemic, this is an ongoing conversation. So at your next meeting, we hope to bring back an additional conversation on the budget to really formalize where we are and work items for where we need to go. That I say hope because I'm seeing there's a few items falling to that agenda, so we may need a little bit of wiggle room.
One last question is, So the revenue's been relatively flat over those 4 years that you were showing comparative for. Has there been, I know the revenue doesn't come in evenly month to month, and so I'm wondering, one, there might be a temporal mismatch between spending during the year, which is, more flat, and revenue coming in. But then also, is revenue coming in later for some reason over time, over those years, or is that effect not also occurring?
So we've gotten the large property tax payment, which is what normally comes in December. So we've gotten that. There will be a second payment that's a little bit less in later this year. And so that's our major source of revenue. Property taxes make up 35% of the city's overall revenue. Sales taxes come next. And sales taxes are really up in the air. As I explained in my staff report, we still anticipate, and the sales tax consultant has come in and said it doesn't look like it's going to be great. So we still anticipate that there's going to be a loss. That hasn't materialized yet, but I don't know what of that is from actual spending versus deferrals from the governor's program to defer from last year to this year. We did see a drop in the last quarter of fiscal year 20. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council member? Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, you answered one of my questions. I was going to ask about the police staffing, but I also wanted to know about the overtime. You mentioned wildfire. So the revenues, or rather the expenses, include items for which we're going to be reimbursed down the road. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, good. So that would be one thing that would somewhat mitigate that scary mismatch. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Jordan? Thank you, Councilmember Nason.
To pick up on that, do you have on the spot any sort of rough size on what that reimbursement is? Is it like we talking $50,000, $150,000?
It's more than 50.
Okay.
I don't have the number off the top of my head. I can get that for you.
Okay. Well, that's good enough. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we will see if there's public comment. There is one. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering if there's any data on how much the police department spends on gasoline for the vehicles. I mean, are they octane 91 to where they're spending almost $4 per gallon? If we can get a number on how much it costs just in gasoline alone for the police department, and then do a cross comparison on, electric vehicles for the police department to where they could, drive some Tesla trucks whenever those come out or something. If it's going to be more, if it's going to be better, more efficient for the police department to drive electric vehicles than keep wasting all this money on gas. I mean, I know they get the gasoline from Arco. At least it's cheaper than the gas station across the street. But I'm just curious, how many thousands of dollars are we spending in just gasoline? And also for the public works vehicles. Those are some big trucks. I'm sure they eat a lot of gas. They probably get, instead of miles per gallon, they probably get gallons per mile, So, and also regarding the police department, I know the police department's on 2 12-hour shifts, 6 p.m., 6 a.m. So is the police department getting paid a straight 8 hours and then the other 4 hours is overtime, time and a half? So are the police officers getting, 8 and 4, 8 straight and 4 overtime? Or is it just more efficient for the police department to have 3 8-hour shifts? That way they're not so tired and exhausted by that 12th hour, falling asleep on the job. 12 hours is a long shift to stay alert. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment.
Thank you, Heather Rowden, for a very informative quarterly report. I just want to remind council and staff that the Finance Advisory Commission is still in its formulative phase and looking forward to being able to provide additional information to you as a council and additional input to the city staff as soon as the first meeting of that commission and committee is scheduled. I'm looking forward to serving on that advisory body and hope that I will hear soon that we have another a date, an initial date for the meeting. And I hope that happens before the second quarterly report to the budget. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Next comment.
Hi, Corey Dosty again. I just wanted to use this discussion about the police to bring up the hiring phrase as something that you do have on the table that you could use. And to say that I do think that the Community Task Force on Policing is going to suggest diverting jobs, tasks, duties away from police into other areas. Which, yes, you probably will then have to pay for, but which California is looking to fund in different ways at the state level. And yeah, so I want that to be present as we're thinking about funding for police. Thank you.
And thank you for your comment. Any other questions, comments? All right, I'll bring it back to City Council. Does anyone have any questions, comments, response? So I know this was for informational purpose only. So what are the next steps, timelines should we expect from you?
Cole, do you want?
Sure. Tentatively, we will return to the council on February 16th with a budget update. And you will also be receiving a presentation on the audit, tentatively scheduled for that meeting as well. Again, we need to navigate that a little bit given the other items that are slated for that same agenda. So we will follow up as soon as we have that all lined out and more confirmed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. I was wondering if, Heather, if you could address the issue about the 12-hour police shifts and the question about the overtime.
Sure. So the police shifts are actually specifically laid out in their union contract, which is available online, and it details how they are paid overtime and what their schedules are. They do not get overtime for working more than 8 hours in the day. It goes off of the pay period. Did that answer all of the question?
I believe so. All right, thank you, Heather, for your presentation. And so we look forward to seeing you again next meeting. All right. Now we're going to item number 11, unfinished business. And we'll start with 11.1. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Council. The item before you is the appointment of alternates to the Board of Police and Fire Pension Fund Commissioner. These alternate per Charter Section 9.01 may serve for a period of up to 1 year unless again reappointed. So we're here to ask for your reappointment of these alternate. Staff is recommending council to select a council member to serve as Mayor Gary's alternate and reappoint the other alternate same as previous year as recommended. So I'm here to, I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Do we have any nominations? Councilmember McQuaid? You're on mute.
Thank you. I'd like to do it. I've been on there before and found it very interesting.
Okay. Anyone else? Are we going with Councilmember McQuaid? All right. Do we need to do a vote, Anne? Since it's, yes, okay.
Yes, and also the other alternates as recommended.
Oh, okay.
So the
Vice Mayor Jordan? Oh, go ahead.
I will move that Councilmember McQuaid be appointed as the alternate for Mary Gary on the Board of Police and Fire Pension Fund and or the commission, and that the other alternates as proposed by staff be appointed.
Seconded.
All right, go ahead with roll call.
Councilmember McQuaid?
Yes.
Councilmember Nason?
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
And Mayor Gary?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead and move to item 11.2. This is a charter review committee potential work plan items. Any staff report on that?
Yes, Council. Thank you, Mayor. This is a continuation of your initial discussion at the last meeting. We've simply put it on the agenda again to obtain more direction from City Council in terms of the status of this committee, whether it will continue as a committee, be transitioned to a task force, or I believe there was also a suggestion that it be held until after some other discussions of goals and strategic planning. So we are happy to take whatever direction the council prefers. Happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions? Let's start the conversation. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Well, I stated my preference before, which is to have it as a standing committee so that it has the latitude to raise issues that it might bring to this body on its work plan for potential approval to work upon. I think having members in this body who are thinking about how we can improve our constitution, which is what the charter is, on an ongoing basis is useful. And that particular committee has a long history of itself choosing not to meet when it doesn't have anything particular going on, rather than being directed not to meet. I served on the body for 10 years and there were periods we didn't meet. I know people that served on it for 10 years before that and said that was very much part of the culture of that committee. So I think it is a committee that has a history of being relatively self-regulating in that regard in terms of the burden on staff. It does have an item on its last work plan agenda, which it was not able to complete due to not being able to meet at the direction of the council that I am interested in, which is the extending the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds. And the council did approve that work plan with that task on it. So I'm not aware that the council ever rescinded that approval.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember McQuaid?
I think it was the last time we discussed this, I thought that Councilmember Nason had a really good point about waiting until we do a little more work on our strategic plan and see what we flush out of that. That made a lot of sense to me, and I'd like to go back to that model if possible. I think, like Preston, we sort of said what we have to say about this. I would prefer it was a task force. If we're going to talk about the youth vote, I'd like us to have some discussion about it, which is, not on the agenda for tonight, so I don't want to get into it. But I think it's something we may want to think about before we just consider that we want them to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember McQuaid. Anyone else? Councilmember Taylor?
I'll just briefly add that, as I've stated before, I'm in agreement with Preston on this. I'd, like them to continue meeting. I think or continue as a non-task force, I should say. I think it could work if we transition to task force. I would find it hard for us to come up with topics out of thin air at the moment. Because if the whole point of making them a task force is that they meet when we have something, then it's kind of hard to identify those issues right now. So I personally like the idea of them being able to tell us if there's anything that really needs looking into, and I rely on the experience of Preston having served on that committee and testifying to their self-regulation.
All right. Anyone else before we go to public comment? Nope. All right, let's see if there's any, doesn't appear to be any public comment. So I guess we have a motion to keep it as a committee or a task force, and we can go ahead and vote on that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Vice Mayor Jordan.
Move to continue the charter review committee and have it meet at least for the purpose of developing a work plan. And that potentially could be after our strategic planning effort or before.
Okay.
Seconded.
All right, let's go ahead and do roll. Councilmember McQuaid.
Thank you. Preston, can you clarify your motion a little bit? I would be less likely to oppose this. I'm not quite sure what you're saying about it could either be before or after we do our strategic plan. I think it would make a lot more sense to clarify it's one or the other.
That's fair. I guess I'm a little trepidatious because I don't know how long doing our strategic plan is going to take. And if the body is to take up youth voting, as with any issue having to do with the charter, it's my experience a quite deliberative process. So it's not something you really want to leave until 6 months before the election or 8 months before the election. So I guess a different way to do this would be to establish a date certain when they would have their first meeting, and either we get our strategic plan done by then or we don't. I don't know if there's any notion of when our strategic plan effort would be done. I'm not even sure we know kind of what we're doing writ large in that regard at this point. So maybe that would be a way to handle it, is to kind of put a month certain, and that would also provide time to actually facilitate applications to that body, since there aren't very many due to not having met for the last few years. So I don't know if the city manager or anybody else has any thoughts or timeline on the strategic plan.
We do anticipate to bring back another conversation for the council on the next iteration of your strategic plan. From your last conversation, it seemed that we did have a little work to do in terms of finding a general concurrence on how we're moving forward with that. So I wouldn't want to guesstimate the amount of time that process may take. Your current strategic plan does run through June. So with that, ideally, we'd have another one in place when that one sunsets.
Okay, so Vice Mayor Jordan, do you want to?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm thinking about, because August is recess, having the first meeting in July, guess it'd be kind of late, particularly if it's going to put together a work plan that then has to come to us for approval in September, and then they're not really getting going until even less than a year or just a year before the election, which is only 8 months before we have to provide if there is to be an amendment, which I'm not saying there would be, but if there is to be an amendment, it has to go to the registrar. It has to be approved by us in July of 2022. So that becomes a very short timeline for getting considered work out of the members of that body. So so I'm going to say, put it on the table. It can be amended. That the body's first meeting would be in April. For the purpose of starting to develop its work plan.
Okay.
Oh, and I apologize, my sound went out for a little bit and I didn't hear Councilmember McQuaid's comments, and I apologize. But are we talking about this for youth voting or just people? So if we're recruiting people, we're asking people, are they especially interested in youth voting, but just sort of in general, are they interested in the city charter?
Well, I believe this agenda item does provide latitude for thinking about a work plan for the committee or the task force. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw that.
Right, it has to, it's to possibly identify work plan items and to identify whether or not we want to keep it as a committee or a task force. So if we can vote on that, and then we can determine whether or not what work plan items, if anyone have any ideas, that way we can move this along. So if you want to do a motion to, Vice Mayor Jordan, I believe you started with the motion to keep this as a committee versus a task force. Is that correct?
That's correct. And have its first meeting in April.
Okay. I have a second.
Seconded.
All right, go ahead and do a roll call for the vote.
Councilmember McQuaid,
No.
Councilmember Nason,
No.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
Mayor Gary.
Yes. All right. Do we want to identify any possible work plan items? Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
So I would identify youth voting. And I looked at the rest of the work plan and the other substantial item I don't think is pertinent anymore due to the passage of Measure BB.
Anyone else?
You know,
All right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not particularly interested in youth voting, so, which is my opinion. So we're going to vote on this as a work plan item for them. Am I understanding the process correctly?
So I'm not necessarily sure it's a vote. Is that correct? We're just identifying items that we could potentially look at. You know, is it something that we need to vote on as city manager?
Let me give a little more background. It might be helpful. When this agenda item started to mold, when you were reviewing the advisory bodies, a suggestion was raised by one of the council members that perhaps it would be helpful to look at what a prospective work plan would look like to then determine the utility of the group as an ongoing committee versus a focused task force. And so I don't know, it may actually be premature to identify their work plan items, given that the committee, as adopted by the council now, will have that opportunity to present to you. And then at that time, of course, the council could make any changes or additions to that work plan as you see fit.
Thank you, City Manager. I would agree with that. I think we have to, again, present it because I don't think we've appointed anyone because we've been waiting on this. So first, identifying who's interested in being on the committee, and then we can establish what work plans, as they get together, and we can go from there. Councilmember Nason, go ahead, please.
Yeah, how many applicants do we have? I only know of one.
I think it's on. Right. So if we can somehow market this again, just put it on maybe our newsletter or some way to let the public know that we are recruiting for this this committee. Councilmember Nason?
Yeah, could we kind of have a committee? Because I don't know what to say to people about this. Could we maybe have the folks who are interested in the committee kind of take on the laboring oar for finding recruits for this.
That'd be great. It's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. Okay.
Yeah, I have to work on that.
Right, and it's just basically educating, because most people will be like, you know, what am I going to do here? And I think if we can do that, that we'll be able to get people to come in and be a part of the committee. So thank you, Councilmember Nathan.
I'll put a high school student on there to talk about, if it's youth voting, I'll get a high school student. But if it's something, you know, else, then maybe it's a different sort of candidate. Maybe we just let them go forward with youth voting, and then after we have a strategic plan, if there's something else that we need a committee for, we can recruit for somebody who's appropriate for that.
Exactly. Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yeah, another possible item that comes to mind, which is always hazardous for somebody who's elected to bring up, but the compensation for the council is tied to a government code section. And that government code section has a schedule based on population of the jurisdiction for which the body is representing and legislating. And the state legislature hasn't seen fit to change that since the amendment was passed, the charter amendment was passed, that changed Albany from $5 per meeting, which had been standing in place for quite a long time, to that referring to that schedule. And given the state legislature, so it's been stuck at $300 since that amendment passed, which I think was in 2008, maybe 2010. So given the legislature isn't incrementing that with CPI, it seems like that's something that a charter review committee could potentially look at.
Okay. All right, these are excellent items that we can work towards. Councilmember McQuaid?
I'm trying to think this through a little bit. We don't want to either set up a committee that benefits us or set up a committee that does exactly what we want. We want to be sure that we're setting up a committee that's looking at the betterment of the city. And so I want to be careful that we don't talk about, oh, we need council to get a raise. Who can I put on there that would support that kind of a thing? I think we need to be a little sensitive to how we're doing this. I think we're doing it backwards somehow. And I understand, you know, I remember the last time that there's ways to do it where if you were going to change the salary, it would take effect after the last city council member was gone and that kind of thing. But I just think we need to be a little sensitive to how this, at least how the perception of this may come across.
So therefore, hold on, Vice Mayor Jordan, let's establish a criteria of what we would like it to look. I mean, it doesn't have to be right now, but as we start thinking about, you know, how we want this charter review committee to address things that is for the betterment of the entire city, let's establish that criteria. Once we've been able to do that, maybe the staff can help us with researching some elements. I'm not sure, but if we do that, I think we can better recruit for the appointment. Vice Mayor Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree that it is awkward at this point. I mean, the way this normally works with other bodies is you get applicants, you appoint them, and then the work plan part of it happens. So I agree, it's awkward. It would have been better if the committee had just carried on in terms of bringing this forward. And I think part of having this body is it can look at these issues and say, no, we don't recommend a change. I mean, that's the latitude of having an independent body like this.
Okay, well, thank you. So we'll go ahead. Any other discussion? Make sure there's no public comment. All right, any other discussion, comment before we move on? All right. Any future items, agendas, future agenda items, sorry, number 13. Anyone? No? Okay, Councilmember Nason, go ahead.
Just mentioning, you know, with the, that we still have, we were talking about the Constitution earlier, and we still have a constitutional problem and need to consider that at some point. We cannot forever have a municipal cross.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Nason. Anyone else? Councilmember Tiedemann? Councilmember McQuaid? Vice Mayor Jordan?
Well, I guess I'll just relay that I've put in a request to have the sidewalk policy come before the body for consideration.
Okay. All right, we'll go to item number 14, announcements of city meetings and events. We would ask that you would govern yourself accordingly. If there's any changes. I don't see the financial advisory committee on here, and I looked on the calendar, so hopefully we can get that soon. I'm not sure what the timeline is for that to be on our calendar, but if you know, city manager.
Sorry, trying to note the vice mayor's comment. I don't have that yet. I know we have 3 members appointed. Ideally, we'd have all members appointed. So if there's anyone out there still needing to make an appointment, that would be lovely.
Okay.
And we will get that group set up to meet as soon as we can.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I think there's a public comment. I'm sorry if I missed that. There is. We get public comment 1 minute. I forgot to ask for future agenda items for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 2 future agenda items. One is obviously the Golden Gate Fields with treating the horses like slaves. I mean, really, the horses do all the work. They don't get paid. You know, they're just treating horses like slaves right in our backyard. And that's so inhumane. So we got to do something about that. There were so many public comments this evening, about what's going on at Golden Gate Fields. Not only are they spreading the COVID virus with all the workers down there, they're spreading the virus. They're treating horses like less than what they should be. It's really sad. And also, if you're aware of what's going on with Mars and Nestle chocolate, there's a huge thing going on with Mars and Nestle chocolate hiring children to, you know, kind of like slave labor again here. So if you could do some research, maybe staff could do some research on, maybe we could have put a ban on Nestle chocolate and Mars selling those brands in Albany, because if we keep selling those brands, we're just supporting slave child labor. It's not cool.
Thank you, Jeremiah, for your comment. All right, before we adjourn, I just want to point out on item 14, letter F, that our city council next meeting will be Tuesday, February the 16th at 7:30 instead of Monday, February 15th. We will be observing President's Day. So if you can govern yourself accordingly. With that said, thank you so much for your participation, council members and public, for chiming in. We do appreciate the staff's hard work in providing everything we need in order to conduct our meeting effectively. And with that said, I say good night and meeting is adjourned. Thank you.